Hello. Hello, people of the internet. How's it going? Let me know if you can hear me and see me. Let me know if you can hear us and see us. It's going to be an exciting stream. We're joined by some super cool people. Some more people coming later on. But yeah, we're going to talk about Dune Prophecy, the new Dune
Woo.
thing. Yeah, woo. That's
Woo.
happening on HBO. So yeah, it's super exciting. Um, Before we get started, I'm just gonna say we're gonna be doing spoilers. Oh, Leo just popped up. What's going on, Leo?
Hey, hello.
We're
G'day,
going to be
Leo.
doing
Hello,
spoilers for
hello.
the show. So if you have not seen the first episode, you shouldn't be here. And we will. We're not going to shy away from referencing things that happen later in the Dune books. So we'll try not to like spoil totally like every event in the Dune saga, but we will be referencing things that happen later in the Dune books. Um, as I like to say, like Dune is a reality to be experienced. It's not something that can be spoiled or something like that. I don't know.
Well said.
It,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's something that Danica says, but I forget. But she's not here, so I had to say it. All right. So yeah, we sound good, guys. We sound good. Everybody, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going, AltshiftX?
Yeah, no, I'm excited, Quinn. I mean, this is like the first Dune TV show since what, like 2000 on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah,
It's
over
it's
20
cool
years.
to see like a high budget Dune show. It's got potential. I hope.
People are saying turn my mic up. Is that good? Is
Whoa,
that good? Or is it too
whoa.
loud now?
You sound like the God Emperor, Quinn.
Am I the God Emperor?
His voice echoes through
What
time.
is survival if you do not survive whole? Okay, that's better. Sweet. Good. Okay, I think I got my volume too high in my ear, so I sound extra loud in my ear. That was what was going on. Sweet. Okay, now we're good. So yeah, episode 1 of Dune Prophecy. We've been waiting for this for a long time. Initially, it was
Yeah.
called Dune Sisterhood, and I wonder what was the reason that they changed the title. To me, I was thinking that they didn't think that manly guys would click on a show called Dune the Sisterhood, so they had to change it to Dune Prophecy. I wonder because I feel like this is Dune the Sisterhood.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not the book Dune the Sisterhood, but this show is the Sisterhood. So
is
I don't know. I feel like Dune the Sisterhood fits more than Dune Prophecy. I don't know, but
is
maybe
it
they are shifting to more the focus on Raquel's prophecy.
is it
Maybe it
mean to say
sounded.
maybe they read the book?
I was
Maybe
gonna
they
say
did,
maybe it
yeah.
sounded like too much like the book that people
Mm,
might get the impression it was solely an adaptation of that, but they are
Yeah,
moving forward with it in time, so to be an original storyline too. So maybe they want it. They also changed showrunners. I don't know if that
yeah,
was another
true.
probably issue too. This show has gone through a lot of changes. It's been 5 years since it was announced too.
I know. Like around the time that the movie got announced, they said they were making this show, and like I don't feel like any of us were like super optimistic about it this entire way through. It's been kind of like, what is this even going to be? Like we really had no idea. Um, and I do agree that I feel like probably the reason for the name change is because they wanted to like distinguish it from the Brian Herbert books to
Mm,
be like, this is not that, because it really isn't. We get like a huge 30-year time jump from anything that happens like in the this trilogy.
right.
So it's all new, and so that's interesting.
I
So
I will
go
say
ahead.
I think they've also changed. I know that in the early promo stuff they were saying 10,000 years before like Villeneuve's films, and now they're saying 10,000 years before Paul Atreides. So I think
Hmm.
prophecy also ties it to future events, which most audiences are now going to be more connected to personally, versus tying it to a book that people have read.
I think
Yeah,
I saw a comment by the showrunner in an interview was saying that they changed the name partly to show that it's not just about the sisterhood, it's also about the imperial politics and it's
Yeah.
about Travis Fimmel setting people on fire. So I guess that's
oh,
part of the name change.
that was one of the more interesting parts in the episode. Like I had a bunch of ideas about like what the whole fire thing was, but like, what did you guys think about the fire things? Because we're just gonna jump around. So What did you
The
guys think
very
about
end?
that whole thing? Yeah, like the fire thing. What was up
Yeah.
with that?
The first, when I saw that in the trailer footage, I thought that that was a vision. So I was surprised that that was actually happening.
Like
That
the
whole
pain
scene,
test,
Mhm.
Paul Atreides'
yeah,
hand burning. Yeah.
it looked exactly like that. So that's kind of my theory too. Like because it looked exactly how it's described of what happens or what it feels like, the sensation of the pain box, what it does to you, burning flesh, like peeling away like that. And each adaptation has shown that to indicate what Paul is feeling. And it looked like that. So I
Yeah.
don't, I think there's something going on with Desmond Hart that's very intriguing. Um, and it's really sparked my imagination. I think it's some sort of early technology possibly of
Hmm.
that kind of an early of what would become the pain box test possibly.
Potentially. AltshiftX, turn up the gain on your mic. Everyone's saying that your mic is super low. Gotta get
Is
these
this
mics
better?
balanced. I'll say something.
I've turned up the gain a bit, so maybe this is better.
Is
Yeah,
that
I
better?
see
It
it.
sounds better to me. It does
The
sound louder.
dulcet tones of Altshift.
I was
Well,
gonna say, Raquella talks about the burning truth and says
mhm.
Valia will see the burning truth.
Mm.
So I wonder if Desmond's fire power is that
It
burning truth.
seems
Because
like it.
Desmond says something that is true when Desmond says, "Hey, the Bene Gesserit is meddling with the Imperium, and that might be bad." And that is true. Like Desmond seems villainous, but he's making a true point. So,
Yeah.
so I guess in that sense, Desmond embodies the burning truth.
It's like, yeah, everything Desmond's saying is true. Like, we are being controlled by the Bene Gesserit. That's just
Yeah.
a true
Yeah.
fact. Like,
That was
it is. Go
that was
ahead.
very Frank Herberty. That whole
Hmm.
line of dialogue for me seemed to strike right to the heart of Frank Herbert's themes. So that was like my favorite part. Was unfortunately it was like the very end where I'm finally now getting really hooked into it, and
Mm.
that was a cool way. The whole sequence too with Kasha,
Mm.
very
Hmm.
fascinating and very different things that they could do with that.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's seen my review, I think that it's probably some like early Ixian esque technology, right? And in my review, we were talking about like Arfel and the cloud darkness of holy judgment, and like the biblical quote that talks about the cloud darkness of holy judgment, and the line that says, "A fire goeth before him and burneth up his enemies." I mean, I feel like that's so obviously connected that I think it has to be related to the same thing. So to me, that leads to like Ixian technology, because
Yeah.
Leto II at the end of God Emperor of Dune says, "The Ixians can no longer create Arafel." So to me, it seems like Ixian technology. It doesn't seem like some kind of like psychic power to me, because I feel like that's very not Frank Herbert Dune. And I don't know I don't know many Dune fans that would like that. I don't know. It needs to be like forbidden technology. And I feel like Desmond's plot line is kind of like suggesting that, like judging by his conversation with the Emperor, where he's talking about like some in the Imperium think that maybe we ban thinking machines too soon. So yeah, I think it's Ixian technology. And I
Do you-
also think that Desmond might be a Gola. Some people said like maybe Face Dancer, but Face
Yeah.
Dancer might be like too, I don't know.
Well,
It seems like it's too early in the timeline for a Face Dancer.
I have a
Maybe.
question, Quinn. Do you think Desmond? So I think that's a fun bait and switch, like plot wise. Like Desmond is like, this is clearly the power of God I've been given, but maybe he's misinterpreting something that someone else has done. Do you think he's in on it? Like, do you think he is an agent of Ix who's like intending to do this, or has he misinterpreted these powers that the Ix has meddled with him, or what do you think?
I think he's been like meddled with and tricked in some way.
Mhm.
I don't know, kind of like Duncan Idaho in Dune Messiah. I don't like. I just think he's like maybe been altered in some way, because it does seem like he gets swallowed by the worm, right? How do you
Seems like-
survive
Look
It's
like it.
being swallowed by the worm without being a Gola in the Dune universe? I mean, this isn't Harry Potter. Like he got ate by a worm.
I'm
They would
imagining
need his
Travis
body though,
Fimmel.
right?
He's gonna
What did
like
you say?
crawl out of the worm like Boba Fett coming out of the Sarlacc. is what I'm
Exactly.
A
imagining.
single con.
Yeah, they need to recover his body, right? Is that to work?
They
Or
do, or they can just maybe a few cells. They have all sorts of tricky ways of getting. They just
Yeah.
need like dead cells or
Maybe
cells from his dead body.
they'll
And
finally
for
address
his
whether or not worms excrement the things that they eat. They're like, we finally got it. On the
Yeah.
tail
We've
end.
all been wondering about sandworm poop. That's what the fans want to know.
and do you think
I
those are his
kinda doubt-
memories?
I kind of
That's a-
doubt that they're going to introduce like the Ixians because like they've got
Mhm.
5 episodes left in this season, right? Like we're already 16% of the way through the season. I don't
yeah.
know if they have time to introduce like more complicated factions that are unfamiliar to the audience because they weren't in the Villeneuve movies.
That's
I
how I
know.
feel about Tlaylax, because I think
Yeah.
Tlaylax is this old messy, gross bag of junk. But like
It's
it
so much.
is sort of a counterpart to Rachis. Like canonically, they're in the
They
same
are.
system. They're in the same
Mm.
kind of like. I could see that being more so it. But you're right that do we call you AltShift? AltShift.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever.
Full government name.
Alt or shift.
AltshiftX.
Sure.
Shift. So that's a great point, Shift. I think we only have so much runway, but we've already seen how much ground they've covered in 1 hour. Like this show was getting it done. So
Yeah, true.
maybe it's
Do you think we saw the God Emperor in the vision?
Good question. Everybody has a different opinion on this.
yeah.
Because to me, that didn't give me God Emperor. It gave me machine sounds. And the
Yeah.
eyes, when it
Design-wise.
turned on, I'm going to say it looked exactly like the Blizzard robot. The blue eyes.
Yeah,
Look at the
yeah.
scene when it turns on, the eyes look exactly the same.
The
And the
Gecko
sounds
Decepticon.
sound the same, except deeper.
I just don't
So-
want to believe that.
Sounds like
Yeah,
machine.
I do not want to see Skynet Omnius at the end of
I
this
know.
season.
I
Or
know.
But maybe it's a
Erasmus.
red herring. Maybe it's. I feel like it's the God Emperor that the way he says, the way Desmond talks about just very God Emperor like things,
Yeah.
and about resting, that we basically replaced the people that control the machines that controlled us. Well, we just replaced the mechanism of control, and I wonder if it's. I wonder if this is the impetus for the Kwisatz Haderach program, that they realize that Bene Gesserit on the throne is not enough. They
Mhm.
need a super being.
A quiz that's Haderach.
Which
I don't know.
ironically leads to the tyranny that they're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
that like Desmond is very much like Leto the God Emperor because both Desmond and Leto, they're dicks and they're right. Like they're murderous,
Yeah.
harsh people, but they have a very correct point. So yeah, I think that's a great parallel.
What did he say? The sacrifices must be made. Desmond
Yeah.
said something that was something about sacrifice must be made to for the greater good, or something like that,
Yeah.
to the young
kid.
prince.
Pruitt. Your
And that
son.
again made me think of the tyranny, the tyrant.
What a terrible death. But look, here's my thing too. I'm just gonna defend the whole Ixian thing and why I still think it could be Ixian technology. And it's because like if they're totally making reference to the God Emperor and saying the word Arafel. And the first time that Arafel is mentioned, also the Ixians are mentioned. Like God Emperor with his dying breath says, "Do
Yeah.
not fear the Ixians. They can make the machines, but they can no longer make Arafel." And they're literally his dying words. So I feel like if they're mentioning Arafel and he's saying the Ixians can't make Arafel, that's a huge Dune lore thing where if you're going to bring it up, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, I
bring
was
it
very
up
surprised
correctly.
by that, actually. How a deep cut God Emperor reference right off the bat.
Yeah.
super
I
deep
was-
cut.
I wasn't expecting that. Like, whoa,
Mhm.
okay, I see you.
I was gonna
completely
say,
shocked by it.
as much as I'm resistant to like Terminator robots in the Dune universe, there is like prime canon. Like Frank Herbert wrote about Leto talking about the Ixians making a like prescient hunter seeker machine that would hunt
Yes.
down all biological stuff, and I'm like, Ixians, chill. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? That's so dumb. But that is like prime canon. So very much so, we could still be within Frank Herbert's sandbox, looking at this prescient machine at the end of RFL and all that. Maybe that's the thing that the sister had us to avoid.
Mhm.
And yet
Maybe.
they grounded us immediately in
Oh,
Brian
true.
and Kevin's canon by starting
know.
the series with a
I know.
CGI giant stomping Cymec
Cymex.
robot. So like we can't
I know.
avoid that is how they're framing
He's an
this.
executive producer. They have to, I think.
I just think it was a missed opportunity, though, to not use the exact dialogue that Frank Herbert described the Great Revolt as, that
Mm.
once men turned their thinking over to thinking machines. I feel like that would have set the tone, that because I want more from just they say that this show is based off of Frank Herbert's epic universe as well as Brian Herbert's book, but I want more than just Frank Herbert's names of houses and planets and factions. We need the themes and ideas in there, and I think that would have been a great little nugget to start it off with. It also kind of made the later scenes with Desmond a little inconsistent, because he says that the machines were doing the thinking for us, and we simply just swapped out the mechanism of that control with the Bene Gesserit. It does seem a little bit confusing when we put that in conjunction with the introduction.
That's a really good point. Like, to anyone that doesn't get this, there is, I guess, a discrepancy between the way Frank Herbert describes the Butlerian Jihad and what is depicted in Brian Herbert's Machine trilogy. Whereas, like, Frank Herbert describes the Jihad as, humans in charge of machines that are controlling other humans with machines. We gave our thinking over to machines, but that only led other men with machines to control us. In the Brian Herbert books, it's very much like a Terminator machine war. So I feel like that's a pretty subtle distinction, but it matters a lot. So I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen what direction the show is going in. Abu, you haven't spoken in a while. Got something to say?
Sorry.
Abu texted me.
I've been texting Leo on the side.
I wonder how long he can keep up the silent Coke sipping. Just sipping his
It's
drink.
not even Coke. It's a chocolate milkshake. From Five Guys.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was a chocolate milkshake kind of day. Long day for me.
Yeah.
I have been enjoying this, so maybe I'll just listen. No. It is tough. I agree with all of you that I would love for the Cymex, for all of the Terminator style robot war nonsense to not be a part of this show. But I think the reality, the sort of like production reality, is that Brian Herbert is in charge of the estate. Any deal that's made in a Dune property adaptation goes through him and goes through the estate. Legendary inked a deal with the Herbert estate, I believe, back in 2016. And so I don't think we're going to get entirely Frank's vision of the Butlerian Jihad. I don't think we're going to entirely get purely the Frank Herbert Dune universe without any Brian influence in it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a reality that we're going to get from this TV show. And that's kind of the mindset that I'm going into it with is, okay, there will, this is still Frank Herbert's original universe and the thing that means so much to me. Yes, there will be Brian stuff in here, but I'm excited to be able to pick out the potential like Leto 2 reference here and there. RFL is something that we talked about when you joined us on the podcast, Quinn. So that clearly is a reference to God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, latter books in the Frank series. And I don't know, one episode in, I've sort of made my peace. It could get worse, like next episode could be like 35 minutes of robot warfare and I will be completely checked out and that will turn me off from the show completely.
Yeah.
But at the moment, one episode in and having really enjoyed this first episode, I'm willing to accept this compromise of we get more Dune. It's relatively good Dune. It looks great, solid acting, so far interesting story-wise.
Doesn't look cheap.
It doesn't look cheap. And if the price for more Dune and more good Dune is I put up with a little bit of Brian lore tampering here and there, I don't know. That's a price I'm willing to pay.
Just think about it. If this show was theoretically really successful and it did really good, we could get a Children of Dune show. We could get a God Emperor thing.
That's right.
Like, maybe we should just, maybe we can put up with like this until the next movie comes out, and and we can make something swing. But I basically agree with what you said. I think that the show is pretty good for what it is. And I think that by referencing some of the more deep lore things like RFL, they're kind of like sending a love letter to some Frank Herbert Dune fans, saying that we've read the books too, we understand what's going on, we got to do this Brian Herbert shit right now. Just like wait with us for a little bit, and then we can like maybe give you guys something that's closer to what Frank Herbert maybe envisioned. Because also Frank Herbert didn't finish the books; he died. So there's a lot of like, I got a comment on my video like yesterday of someone saying like, not in the mean way, but like Quinn, like you're basically saying that you know better than like Frank Herbert's own son, like what what Frank Herbert was trying to say. And it's like I don't feel like I necessarily know better. It's just I have a different opinion. I feel like if you read the books, it doesn't logically follow what Brian Herbert does.
Yeah.
It really doesn't, and it's like a little bit frustrating. And I feel like
Absolutely.
they're asking it's kind of like it's asking you to just ignore that, And I'm like, I don't want to ignore it. Like it's a bit jarring, but yeah. So
yeah, and I will say I've been watching and reading and listening to a lot of interviews with the showrunner, Alison Shapker, and the EP Jordan Goldberg, I believe. And maybe this is just in my head because this is how I feel about it, but I also get the sense that they're doing as much as they can sort of within the scope of their job and their contracts to separate themselves from Sisterhood of Dune, Mentats, like the Brian Herbert books. In particular, I was listening to an interview with Allison yesterday, and the interviewer was like, well, what are the challenges of adapting a source material like Sisterhood of Dune into a show? And she was like, well, this isn't an adaptation. We are inspired by the Brian books, but we are taking this in our own direction, and we have the flexibility and freedom to do so within certain limitations. And I find that really interesting. You know, I get the sense that the showrunners and the creatives behind this project, you know, they're not openly ever going to like shit on Brian Herbert stuff, but I think they also are aware of the opinions out there concerning Brian's works, and that they are being careful to work with that, I think. But there will always be some things that they just have to do because contracts state they do.
I mean, I think they're doing a good.
Sorry, go on.
Oh no, go ahead.
The question for me is how are they handling the themes and the meaning? Like the Butlerian Jihad, the reason why that's frustrating for me in the Brian Kevin books is that, like, I was reading Sisterhood, and you know, the anti-technology people keep saying that, well, the reason why we have to smash all the computers is that evil Skynet robots took over the world and they're evil, and that's why we have to smash all the machines. Right. And that's about as deep as they go. But in the Frank books, there's all this really deep philosophical thought about, well, the reason why we reject technology is that it's better to be self-reliant and to use the power of your mind. And technology can concentrate power in the hands of people who you might not trust. And like, there are all these like deep thoughts about why it is that we should avoid complex technology. So I'm wondering, you know, in this show, they have the scene where, you know, Desmond smashes the little toy robot. Right. So which side are they going to go? Are they just going to be superficial and say, oh, well, technology bad because evil stompy cyborgs? Or are they going to say, well, actually, technology bad because it's better to develop your own human mind and it's better to avoid concentrating power in the hands of tyrants, et cetera, et cetera. And again, they've only got 5 more episodes in this season. So I don't know if they've got time for, you know, waxing philosophical. But that's the heart of what Frank is about. So I hope that they put some thought into the themes.
Yeah, the avoidance
really
of stagnation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could see, there's a scene in the initial trailer where Valia and Desmond are in that like room where Javico Carino's looking at the map and he sees the, you know, worm scene, that whole little play out. I could see them having that conversation where they're having this kind of broad, maybe strategic debate. But that's also with the potential reveal that there are computers at the Sisterhood. We still haven't gotten confirmation of what the breeding records are. Yeah. And of course, in Sisterhood of Dune, it is computers. It's forbidden technology. And all we've seen is that little chip, that little Chekhov's computer chip. That she uses to unlock the door. And
do you all think that's a reveal they're holding on to? because I felt
I
like
think
in
it's a
this first
computer.
episode,
Yeah.
we very intentionally didn't see Valia go in to quote unquote
Yeah,
check
just
the
see her
records.
coming
We
out,
only
yeah.
saw her walk out and then a conversation in the hallway, and I was like, that felt like a weird cut. That felt like
Yeah.
we're missing a scene, I think they're holding on
It's a
to a big
computer.
computer reveal.
It's a computer, and it makes sense that it's a computer. And it's funny because in God Emperor of Dune, I think it's like Siona that's like, "Oh, you're using Ixian technology," and he's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever."
Right.
And I could see
What
the
about
Bene
it?
Gesserit doing the same thing. Like, yeah, what? We're running
Yeah.
this.
Right.
We can use it. We said you can't.
Yeah.
I can.
There's like a
Please,
server
better.
farm of Dells in there from 1995.
Oh,
They're
that'd be
rocking
funny.
Windows 95 and just churning out breeding program stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
does
do
seem
wonder-
Like
They're
they're
like
holding out on
playing
that reveal.
MS-DOS text games. You know, Snake in there.
Breaker.
Right. Or Oregon Trail, one of them is used for Oregon Trail exclusively.
Or the 1992 game. They're playing Dune 2.
Yeah, that's right.
I know, right?
What were you going to say, Nerdcookies?
Oh, I do wonder if they're maybe trying to do too much. I feel like it does seem a bit of a mixed bag, like how the first episode plays out. And I worry about moving forward, or we're going to jump around to the past. I did worry about that initially when they announced it was going to be past, present, and we're going to have vision of the future storylines. It did seem like a lot of things to kind of insert in here. And it does seem a bit overwhelming right now, I think, and that's why it seems a bit inaccessible to general audiences right now. So I just have this concern for just the normies and the general audiences, but even myself as just a regular viewer, separating out my lore brain, it did feel very a little bit of a jumbled mess here when we go from Brian Herbert's things and then the young adult romanticy kind of parts, and then the political drama, this high philosophical concepts. I wish it would be more ground, like pick a lane to a degree. Yeah, you can allude to things from Brian Herbert's background. Sure, okay, but I think it needs to flow better. Like it needs to be more of a consistent tone. That way, it doesn't alienate everybody. I think they're trying to please everybody. They have an original storyline they're working from. They have Brian Herbert stuff, and they have Frank Herbert's themes too. I feel like they're trying to hit all the bases within the fandom, and they may unintentionally may not be doing the best that they could in all of those elements. So
Right, that's true.
it's a delicate balance, but yeah.
Great point.
I was gonna say, I like young adult sci-fi. Like I just watched every Hunger Games movie over, even
Nice.
the terrible Ballad of Songbirds one.
Yeah.
But
I just watched that recently too.
so bad. But anyway, but that nightclub scene felt so not Dune. It was the most not Dune thing. It really, really took me out of the episode, and I wasn't even expecting it to. But as soon as I saw it, I was just like, "What is this? Does not feel Dune." If you're gonna give me this whole let's see what people in this universe do for recreation, at least do something unique. But you give me the most overused dystopia, sci-fi, whatever cyberpunk set possible, which is a stupid bar with the music going inst inst inst. It was just, I hated it.
Remember in the Star Wars prequels when Obi-Wan walks into a bar and some guy offers him death sticks? That's the energy I got from this, It's science fiction trying to be cool and sexy,
Yeah.
and just falling on its goddamn face.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Shift, you didn't like the space cocaine?
No, I mean, I was wondering what drug it was. I'm like, this isn't meant to
Same.
be spice, is it? This isn't spice.
I think-
don't have sex on spice. That's a bad idea.
The Fremen
could you
do
imagine?
it. Spice orgies? They literally.
Well, two does not
deal.
make an orgy.
Okay. It's a good start. All right. Knocks are off. Things are happening. I do think that my headcanon is the little vaporizers are spice melange gas. And that's why the bartender has the blue within blue eyes, because maybe she's a regular partaker or something. Right. But yeah, no mention of what the cocaine was. They could have said Samuda, Alaka. There's a lot of in-universe things they could have just name dropped, and it would have been 15 times better.
If
Yeah,
Frank
it was
was
like, oh,
writing this
cool.
scene, if Frank was writing this, there'd be a whole lot more emphasis and description on what the drug was and what the effect of the drug
Yeah.
was
Totally.
than on the sex.
Yeah.
Frank had very little interest in writing about sex. He was all about what's going on in people's drug-addled brains.
Yeah.
Samuda is really cool too. I've always wondered about it because that's the one where like you do the drug and then you can like listen to music and it's like
Timeless
Yeah.
sustained ecstasy.
Sustained
as it's
yeah.
called. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been cool, but they didn't do it.
Yeah, it feels like a different set of writers almost were doing the younger people scenes and then the other writers for the political intrigue drama. It just felt a little out of balance there in terms of the writing style.
That's such a
Yeah.
funny
A little
idea.
bit.
They have some Gen Z person writing like all of the club scenes, and they're like, "Okay, cool. You're going to handle that. We're going to do like Javico and Desmond talking."
That's a good point because I enjoyed all the political
Yeah,
stuff.
same.
Like
That's
the
great.
Bene Gesserit, like maneuvering, trying to like get these houses to join together so that they can manipulate. I think one of my favorite moments was when the Duke Reaches and the Emperor are discussing things like out on like that terrace, I guess. I don't know
Oh,
what it
yeah.
was. And then they've both got their truth sayer, and they're both thinking that their truth sayer is like guiding them, but really the truth sayers are having their own secret conversation with each other and only serving the Bene Gesserit. That I love seeing that kind of stuff, and I liked all that stuff in the Villeneuve movies where we saw how the Bene Gesserit operated. I love that Fade Rotha scene with Margot Finring. That was like my highlight scene of the entire movie. So I hope that we get more of the Bene Gesserit being really sneaky and manipulative throughout this show, and I really want to see more of that. I want that to be kind of the focus in the political stuff.
So the vision, I kind of want to get y'all's thoughts on it. I got the feeling when the whole Kasha nightmare was happening,
Hmm.
I got the feeling it reminded me of the part at the end of the first Dune book where Paul is challenging Mohayim to look in the place that you dare not look, and you find me there staring back at you. It reminded me of that's the feeling of terror that they would feel by encountering that masculine avenue that they are terrified of. I don't know. What do you think that could be what she was feeling in that moment?
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and that kind of like is, I guess, a little bit of evidence in the direction of the eyes being maybe the God Emperor Leto II, because he does say you'll find me there staring back at you,
Yeah.
and it was blue eyes staring back. So I feel like, are the showrunners kind of keeping it vague, trying to keep us guessing? Is it a machine? Is it Paul or Leto II? Because I definitely could see it that way. I definitely could see it that way.
I really like
Because
that.
there's been no mention of the Kwisatz Haderach yet, too, in this.
True.
So
Right.
this is maybe a part of this show is going to be like, we're going to see the point in which they decided, okay, we need to create a Kwisatz Haderach to protect us from the same threat, potentially, that Leto II saw, it seems like.
Yeah, and Desmond, when he was talking about his incident with the sandworm, he says that he felt fear, that he was, of course, obviously, with the sandworm coming, but that he prayed to the gods to feel nothing. And then he overcame his fear and survived. And that just feels, that's exactly what the Bene Gesserit would need to do to advance that next stage to advance the species. So it's like,
Well-
is this the impetus for why they sift people for humans?
Maybe.
That next
well, you know
stage?
what Desmond actually says is he uses this word, reborn. Gola.
Reborn.
He says he felt reborn. He's a
Gola.
freaking Gola.
That's what he said. He said, "I felt reborn." Gola.
Yeah, that's the exact line.
It's very subtle. He might be a
Well,
Gola.
so
I
good.
am a Gola.
Travis Hamel was so good. I loved his.
He was
He
great.
is
He was my
really
favorite.
good. Well, let's take a moment. Everybody in this was really good. Even like
Yeah.
the kid that played Pruitt.
Yeah.
Like he was
Great.
really good. Everybody's
Yeah.
really good in this. So
I
acting.
would have preferred Mark Strong's Shaddam Carino.
Yeah, right. I
He was really
agree.
good as Emperor. I like that.
Yeah, we talked about when we did that live stream after the movie about Christopher Walken. I feel like all of us basically said that was one of the worst casting choices because it basically added nothing to the role.
Yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't bad necessarily, but it really didn't feel like Emperor Shaddam. This is not. Where's the decadence? I don't know. He was he was wearing a bag the whole time too. Just wearing like a sheet. The whole movie. I was
Yeah,
like, what
I
is
did
this?
not
spooky
enjoy Emperor's pajamas. It was very not what I imagined it was.
No.
I do think so. borrowing from Sisterhood of Dune, right? Salvador Carino, who's the emperor in Sisterhood of Dune, is this like, he's terrible. He sucks so much. He's such a bad emperor. And I think Mark Strong did such a good job of playing the emperor who's kind of still leaning too hard on everyone. Like we get the line from Natalia that he used to basically do everything she said, and now he has Kasha. So he's like, where's Kasha? How am I going to go to this party without Kasha there? And then he is also like, oh, Desmond Hart, you have opinions. Tell me your opinions. I want to do what you think I should do. And I like that idea of the emperor, the one at the highest point of power in the entire universe, is kind of useless and is like kind of not that great, is a fun theme that we see in Dune. And then it's also fun to see that here in the show too.
Yeah, Javico. How are we saying his name? Javico?
I don't know. I'm going to change it every time I say it.
So he's way too dependent on his truth sayer. And Desmond Hart, he took out two birds with one stone, because he has this agenda against the Bene Gesserit. So he takes out Kasha, who's like the Bene Gesserit's most direct line of control over the Emperor and over the future Empress, Ynez. So she's gone. And then in the same time, he takes out Pruitt, the Bene Gesserit's match. So he really, really undermines them at this point in time. So it remains to be seen how they move forward in the next episode, because I wonder what everybody's reaction is going to be to like this just burned up kid in the hallway. Like, what is about to happen?
Yeah.
Like,
and how'd that happen to Kasha? Like, you get the one where he's in the room with him, but at the same time, so when they meet, the only time they're in the same room together with Desmond and Kasha and the Emperor, he's like twirling his ring. He's twirling his ring. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but yeah, they lock eyes for a bit, and she kind of has a difficulty reading him for like a little bit. Maybe he's resistant at first, and then she can read him. Did he do something there?
Maybe.
If it's a technology thing, I don't know.
With the kid, I thought for sure he did something to the toy. That at first I thought that he poisoned the toy because he like picked it up and like threw it back to him, and then when the kid was touching it later, that's when like it all pops off at the end. But like we don't see him touch Reverend Mother Kasha this episode. We don't see him touch him or really like even come close to her. So it's like how.
And I don't think he had decided to kill the prince until he met with the Emperor and said, "If get me a way out of this marriage, and I'll believe in the gods," or something like that.
Yeah.
I think the exact line is, "If only that child were murdered, I would be free to do what I want."
I'll be a true believer. And you could tell in his face, like, okay, I'll get you out of this marriage. So I think that's when he had decided to do it then. But yeah, I thought that too, poison maybe at first. But then, I don't know, it's so fuzzy when it comes to Kasha for me. He was clutching a black piece of cloth right before he went inside the palace.
Yeah,
like, I don't know what he's doing.
Do we remember?
What did you say?
I don't know.
What do we think what is?
As I was chewing on pita bread. The cloth. The little like scrap of black cloth that he had. It's like leather or something, like a piece of a uniform.
Yeah. They made a point to show it right before he entered the palace, him like rubbing, I don't know what that was.
In the interviews, they said that Desmond has like someone very important to him that he's searching for or something.
Oh.
So if I had to theorize, maybe the black cloth is like a Bene Gesserit person who was killed, who he was connected to or loved, and so maybe part of why he hates the Bene Gesserit is that he blames them for the death of someone who he loved, perhaps.
That's a good theory.
I was going to say, counter to the technology possibility, so something that is in Brian's books that viewers might not know is that there are these sorceresses of Rosic, and they just are psychic. And I actually thought in the preview, Kasha burning, I thought that was like a white-robed sorceress after a psychic blast, because that's kind of somewhat described in the books. But a possibility is that maybe Desmond's mother was a sorceress of Rosic. He inherited some of her powers. They maybe didn't come to like the foreground until his near-death experience, a la kind of Spice Agony sort of thing. And we're going to go that route. Like, that would be a very Brian Herbert route, and I don't want that to happen, but I can imagine a world in which his mother is a Bene Gesserit and she was killed and he never, whatever. That whole thing, I could see that happening.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that makes a lot of sense because they do emphasize like the tragedy of the dying sorceresses in the Sisterhood of Dune book, so it's a natural thing to introduce. And while the Ixians are also a good explanation, like one of the details is that someone mentioned like House Richese is connected to the Ixians in the books, so why would Desmond, if he's allied with the Ixians, be killing Pruitt Richese, who was the whole hope of House Richese at this point? So I think that's another argument against it being Ixian technology.
Because his dedication to his cause is more important than just like some great house. This is this isn't a battle of who gets to control the future of humanity and who gets to control human fate. Will it be the Bene Gesserit or will it be like whatever god he serves or whatever ideology he serves? I feel like that's more important than just like, like this great house.
Yeah, he does talk about gods, doesn't he? I wonder who his gods are.
There's certainly like some religious connotation. Yeah, there's definitely a religious aspect to like whatever he's doing for certain. Because he talks to the Emperor about like, do you believe in powers beyond man and machine? He says.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like there's a religious aspect to it for sure. But it just remains to be seen like what's the nature of it. And
I have a crazy theory, but
go ahead.
I don't know. But like there are just things that don't really add up too. So it's, I don't know, you could poke holes in any of it. But I have a theory that the way Desmond has been acting and the way he's saying like very God Emperor like things, I wonder if he is almost like a herald of the God Emperor, and if this is him reaching out or to the past to instigate the breeding program and get it to the point that he wants for his purposes, because he will eventually assume control of the breeding program to meet, the ultimate goals of where to get humanity. Like, is that a thing?
Now that's crazy. That's like some Doctor Who, Bran the Builder, timey-wimey.
It's giving a bit of season 8 Game of Thrones. Third eye, has manipulating everything.
4D chess.
Yeah.
To set the groundwork for later. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That is... I do like the idea, and I had that crackpot like idea that the voice at the beginning of the Villeneuve movies was like the God Emperor, just like speaking like power over spice is power over all or whatever. So I think we all just are really craving the God Emperor, like any references, like anywhere to like be like, no, Brian Herbert, just please.
We all
Please
crave
give
the
us what
worm.
We actually want. We all crave the worm.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of the problem with this show is like, who is it for? Because they're clearly throwing a bone to the Frank fans by mentioning Arafel, and they're starting it for the Brian fans. I'm sure there are some by starting with the Cymex, and then they're doing the YA romance, and then they're doing the political. It's like, who is this for? That all these studios are like, oh well, our show's for everyone. Will appeal to the greatest possible audience, but if you try to please everyone, you please no one, and I'm a bit worried about this show.
You just end up with like grayish brown slop of a show because it's just like all of this stuff in there. I really hope that that's not what this becomes. Like, I really hope that, especially like some of the stuff we saw in this episode with like Ynez and her half brother was just like some of the beginning stuff in this episode to show how they were kind of like not responsible when they were young, and we move on past that and we don't see that again. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not... Because it does feel super mishmashed. And I didn't get to, like, ask any of, like, my more normie friends what they felt about watching the show. I know some of them watch it. I'll have to, like, later. But I wonder, like, if people were, like, a little bit, like, confused. Because it's, like, a lot of characters. A lot of new characters.
Yes.
All these places and all this stuff happening. And it's, like, even if you'd read, like, all 6 Frank Herbert books, you still might be confused watching this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So...
Yep.
I can speak to that a little bit because I was talking to a lot of coworkers today about it who watched it, and there's varying levels of Dune fandom among my coworkers. None of them are quite at the level that I think this group is at, right? So that none of them are like, we've read all 6 books in the Encyclopedia and we've done our homework forward and backward. Some of them have dabbled in the first book, maybe never finished it. Some of them have watched the movies and the 1984 film and read a couple of the books, but maybe didn't make it as far as God Emperor. So different levels there. And interestingly enough, like some of the takeaways I was getting from them was, one, too much exposition. Like they were just like, this is too much all at once that you're dumping on me. Even the first 15 minutes where you're just giving me so much history and background and introducing all these characters is too much for me to process.
Totally fair. Yeah.
A lot of storylines, a lot of characters, a lot of context being laid. I think for us, we're already looking past the foundation and looking for the Easter eggs and the Leto 2 references and the this and the that. For other people, they're just like, where am I? What is Salusa Secundus?
Yeah.
And I think it was interesting. I was getting that sense from my more quote-unquote normie coworker friends. Like, too much exposition. They felt that some of the teasing what's to come was too much, right? There was a lot of, like, you'll find out more about this later in the season, maybe. Or, like, let's put a pin in this idea, but we're going to have Valia mention it. Breeding program thing, but we're not going to actually say anything about what it is. There was some frustration there as well from some of my coworkers who were just like, I liked it, but it felt a little clunky. They were cramming a lot into a first episode. And something that stuck with me, one of my friends at work was like, I couldn't tell you who the main character was.
Yeah.
I
I feel like that's becoming
like,
more common with TV shows these days too, though.
Also, to be fair, Sisterhood of Dune, I'm still not sure who the main character is, and I've read the book like 3 times.
Yeah. And like there were a lot of comparisons to the Game of Thrones pilot. And in that, very clear, like Ned Stark is your main character. House Stark are your main people. It ends on like a weirdly enough similar note of a kid dying, just like Prophecy does with Jaime Lannister. So there were a lot of like comparisons to Game of Thrones, but certainly I think in my conversations today with folks, the vibes were that I'm a little overwhelmed by what's going on and what I'm being told.
It really does go back to like, who are they trying to make this show for? Because I guess probably for all of us, like even like little things like seeing like Salusa Secundus, like not like being this like hellhole. It's like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But then for like a regular person watching, it's just CGI. Like it doesn't even matter. So I don't know.
Or to Abu's
that's
point, people who kind of know Dune are like, wait, isn't this the prison planet? Like that's a question that came up in our Discord quite a bit.
It's just confusing for them.
Where they're like, I'm confused. Isn't this where the Sardaukar
And it's not like
are
they're
from?
even going to explain the change to Salusa Secundus in this series. So like, what is accomplished by reusing that name? I was going to say it's interesting to compare to the Game of Thrones pilot. Like, I mean, I agree that they crammed so much into this episode that it felt almost like a 60-minute long trailer. Because you're right, they threw out all these different things, these flashes of wouldn't this be cool, but they didn't like develop them yet.
Yeah.
And I guess pilot episodes have to do that. But like in comparison to the Game of Thrones pilot, like when I think of that episode, I think that episode did not introduce a whole lot of exposition. It didn't jump around to too many different places. What it did do is it made us like a few charismatic characters. Like very quickly, Game of Thrones established, Tyrion Lannister. I love that guy. I love it when he's on screen. Oh, Bran and Arya, they're so cute. Jon Snow, he's so handsome and so sad. Like they very quickly hooked us with actual like
Not the handsome
emotional
sad boy.
relationships. Well, they do have Constantine. He's handsome. I don't think he's
he's
very
so
sad. Yeah,
He's not sad. He's just handsome.
So my point is that they have thrown all this exposition at us, but they haven't managed to make us care about any of these sad, handsome
that's a great
people
point.
yet. So it remains to be seen whether they'll do that as it goes on.
It's a really good point, especially when compared to the Game of Thrones pilot, because the Game of Thrones pilot, I feel like, does jump around a little bit. I mean, they jump to like Daenerys and it introduces Viserys and Khal Drogo. I mean, like it does a lot, but they do make you care about every character. Like you care about Daenerys and like the fact that she's about to be married off to like this Khal, and you care about everybody. So
and
yeah,
Game
that
of
is.
Thrones did not start with a 2.5-minute long CGI exposition saying 22 years ago King Aerys II was deposed by they didn't do that, but they did do that in Dune Prophecy, which alienates everyone.
And the thing with Game of Thrones too is that they had like a really good source material. They had just like a really good fucking book
Hey, it's
true. You can't
to adapt.
Right. If you're adapting like Game of Thrones Chapter 1 into the TV show Episode 1, it's going to be a great opening pilot, regardless.
But here's the thing, Frank Herbert did write books about the Bene Gesserit in Heretics and Chapter House, and those are not everyone's favorite books, but they're a hell of a lot better than Sisterhood of Dune. So it's
We
like
talked
they
about
could
this.
have based the series on those books.
True.
We talked about this a long time ago. Before we saw anything about the show, we were like, they could have literally started this. They could have done Heretics, and it would
Yeah.
no one would have cared because
Agree.
it's so far in the future from what's happening in the Villeneuve Dune stuff that it doesn't even really matter at this point. I don't know. I feel like you could
Yeah.
do Heretics. You could even reference the God Emperor, and it would make it all the more mysterious.
Yeah.
Because, just the tyrant. Like, we don't know what the tyrant is.
Yeah.
What is that?
I do
that would
wonder
be
though,
so
what's the
cool.
elevator pitch for the normie? What's the Heretics elevator pitch for the normie?
I know, like Dune.
You know,
3,000
like
years
how do you
in the
go
future,
to an
however long.
HBO exec and sit in that room and tell them like this very weird book that's the fifth in a series? Actually, don't worry about the first four. I want to turn that into a prestige 9 p.m. Sunday night HBO show.
Yeah, you
You
seem
know,
hesitant.
you're gonna get laughed out of the room.
Maybe I should say chair dogs more times. Chair dogs.
Right.
Chair
Let me
dogs.
explain chair dogs to you. Here are some
Futars.
examples I drew.
Food.
Slig. Nice slice of slig.
Yeah, for real. You know, as much as I'm certainly in the same boat. Like, I certainly agree that Heretics and Chapter House give us a much more robust image of the sisterhood. It's just tough for me to imagine a sales pitch that gets anyone to greenlight a show.
Well, there definitely is an art to world building. Obviously, this is why Frank Herbert's saga is so iconic. I really feel like they should have gone with his style of introducing his world. Like, he didn't just throw out the ton of exposition right from the
Right.
start. We are introduced to Paul Atreides. We're just in it. And it's from his
Yeah.
perspective, we are learning about the politics. We are learning about the world that we're in. And his conversation with the Reverend Mother, Mohayim, we get all of the sense. We get only the information that we need to continue with the story.
Yeah.
That's how their approach should have been. Just not the Lord. Those have been proven to be just not connect well with audiences. You really have to just ease us into this story. We can start out with start us off with Desmond. That was a really start us off with him like being attacked, that insurgency.
Yeah.
That would have been cool to see.
Being
Start us
eaten
off
by
with
the
an
worm.
action set piece and this worm. That would have been an instant hook. And maybe through his perspective, that we could have followed that. Because I feel like audiences, regardless if you're a fan or not, we all kind of had the same praises and same
Yeah.
criticisms, that we all connect with Desmond Hart and the Emperor and the Valia and Tula. Those are the strongest parts of this episode. So I feel like
Yeah.
they could have picked a character and through their conversations and their journeys,
Yes.
it gradually expand the world out. So it's not so overwhelming to everybody. And that's just how like great storytelling it worked for Frank Herbert.
Amen. I mean, this
although-
pilot didn't feel character first; it felt concept first, right?
Yeah.
Let us shove the concept of the sisterhood into your face, rather than you know, again, like Valia and Tula, the showrunner has said, are the beating heart of this series, and we spend a lot of time with them, I guess, in this pilot. But again, they're just like scheming and talking about the concept and the plan, and we're not getting to know them as characters. So I love what you said there, Nerdcookies. I couldn't agree more.
I will say though, we all know lots of people who were turned off by the first 100 pages of Dune. Like Frank challenged us to like bear with it. You'll eventually come back to understand what a Kwisatz Haderach is and what what is a Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother, and all of those things make sense in retrospect. But I know a lot of people who are like, I just couldn't cut it, man. I got 70 pages in, it was too dense. I didn't have my handheld nearly. So there's a balancing act. I think you're absolutely right. I do personally, I was like, I have enough big questions that I want the answers to. I do think episode 2, the stakes are high. They need to hone in now, and they need to be like, here's something you can sink your teeth into.
Right. It's got to settle in, you know? If episode 1 was just getting us ready and like teasing us, like I agree. Episode 2, like, okay, now we got to get grounded. We got to get in like in the trenches with these characters.
I was going to say.
think that,
Oh, go ahead.
go on.
No, you go.
One of the things that I think did work at the start of this episode was that it asked the question, It said that the Harkonnens were unfairly shamed and that the Atreides lied, and Valia wants to fix
True.
that.
Yeah.
And that's a great hook at the start, because we think of the Atreides as the heroes and the Harkonnens as the villains. So it is immediately interesting
Yeah.
to ask the question of, well, what happened? And how is Valia going to fix this? And what is the truth between the Atreides and the Harkonnens? I think that's the best thing that they did in the first few minutes of the episode. So I'd like to see them lean into that.
I wonder how far they're going to go into that, because like I feel like the book version of Valia is not the same. Maybe she's like evolved in by like 30 years later, but in the book she is not like Raquel is my mother. She's like, no, it's like she's like undermining her in some cases.
Yeah,
but like
she's
I
very
just wanted
Harkonnen focused. In the
I
book.
wanted to say that like people that say like Dune just throws you in and it's so confusing in the beginning have not even attempted to read Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe, because that is the
I mean,
fuck
yeah,
out of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
You'll be so confused. You'll be so confused. But anyway, I was gonna say like too. I feel like this show makes a similar mistake maybe the David Lynch Dune, where it opens up with like this long exposition thing
Yeah.
about the Dune universe, and it
Yeah.
just kind of like throws you out of it. It's
Yeah,
like, what
not
is
enough
this?
people fading in and out randomly.
Princess Irulan.
Actually, I would
Oh
have
wait, I
loved
forgot.
more
I
of
have
that.
more things to say.
I know. I love that. I forgot to tell you.
I forgot
What
one
is
more
that?
thing.
Oh wait, one more thing. Woo!
One more thing.
Yeah.
It's the Midwest goodbye, but it's just Irulan fading in and out for 10 minutes.
I do think so. So to Schiff's point, I think they have planted seeds that could become something really great. Because also we get that little line where Valia rejects House Harkonnen's request for a truthsayer for the 4th time or whatever, and so we are seeing these like tiny little moments that maybe will be explored more of what is. I mean, there's also Baron Harkonnen trying to peddle whale fur and whale
Best
semen.
scene.
Best scene, best conversation. Have you heard about its medicinal properties? So it'll be interesting to see how they pay off on this familiar name, House Harkonnen, and if they explore
Yeah.
that.
There is another Harkonnen character who they've released photos of called Evgeny Harkonnen, and he looks like this sort of decrepit old guy. And so
Really?
I can imagine him saying, "Oh, my
Yeah.
great grandfather Abelard was, shamed by Vorian," and like God knows if they'll actually mention those particular characters from the Brian and Kevin universe, but I think that might be his role. But honestly, all I want to see is what's his name, Virgil Harkonnen from Sisterhood of Dune. He's so funny because he's like Valia's dad, and
Oh, he's the dad.
yeah, and while Valia is like, "We must restore the family name," Virgil's like, "Man,
He's like,
I just want to
"Nah."
grill. Like, I just want to cook my whale stew. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care about politics. I just want a new whale fur coat, man."
Yeah.
Like, Virgil is hilarious. So I kind of hope we get some of that energy, but I'm imagining that this guy Evgeny is going to be exposition dropping. It is my
Yeah.
fear. So I hope they do
Okay,
something.
here I'm
fun
actually
with
double
it.
checking my notes. I was listening to an interview with the showrunner, and she did say that in episode 4, a character named Harrow Harkonnen comes in, and it's her favorite. It was her favorite character to write.
Oh,
Harrow is the whalecom guy.
Yeah. I thought
Oh,
that
it's
was
that
Harrow.
guy.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
so
was
I guess
Harrow.
I guess he's gonna come back. He wasn't just there
Whalecom
for the
guy.
welcome.
what a great legacy that guy's got.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, he's the
in the
Baron.
Variety article, they said that Harrow is working with Valia to restore the Harkonnen powers
Interesting.
and so on. So
Yeah.
I wonder if he's sort of a parallel to Griffin
Yeah.
in the book, being like, Valia's confidant who, tries to help her push the Harkonnen name,
Yeah.
Yeah, Griffin and Virgil's scenes in the book are also very funny because Griffin's like,
Totally, yeah.
"I'm gonna fix our finances," and Virgil's like, "Yeah, if you want to, sure." It's like the worst guy.
Switching gears a little bit, I wanted to get everyone's take on something else that I just remembered. Something that really bothered a lot of my coworkers and friends who aren't the biggest Dune fans was the timeline, the 10,000 year thing. Like this takes place 10,000 years before Paul Atreides. A lot of my friends were like, "Does it though?" Because nothing feels that different than what was happening in Paul Atreides' time. The Sisterhood are still scheming. The shields all look the same. The ships all look the same. Like everything kind of looks exactly the same. How is that technology not evolved in 10,000 years? Are we really that far removed from Paul's time? how does this timeline make any sense? I think, I had a lot of friends asking me that question about timeline. And in particular, I think one of my friends was like, I feel like we're joining the sisterhood too late in the timeline. I thought this was an origin story, but they're already influencing the emperor of the known galaxy, so they're already like established. What am I watching the origins of then? And I thought that was a fair point. Like this was sold as an origin story of the sisterhood that we know in the Villeneuve films and in the books. And we're kind of just watching them operate how they will operate for the next 10,000 years. Curious what y'all thought of that. Timeline stuff, 10,000 years, technology's not evolving. We're kind of seeing the same universe.
I think, like, I guess the in-universe argument for, like, things looking the same and technology not evolving is the fact. I think the Empire was, like, stagnant. And that was, like, Leto II's entire point. Like, stagnation is death. He was like, we need to scatter and, like, diversify and, like, change. But I don't think it looks exactly the same, like, one-to-one. Like, I think that some of the Bene Gesserit stuff looks more close. And I kind of had the idea that maybe, like, as the Bene Gesserit, like, kind of get more power and spread out through the Imperium, that the Denis Villeneuve look, like, comes to be more part of the entire thing.
Yeah, I love that.
Because, I mean, you don't really see stuff like Seleucus Secundus looking in the Villeneuve movies, really. Nothing that quite looks like that. So
but again, we're talking about, like, an average viewer who doesn't even know what Seleucus Secundus is. So, like, the shields do look the same to them, and the ships do all look the same.
I think it's hard. Yeah. It's hard because they want to, like, keep some level of brand recognition.
Absolutely, yeah.
But, like, the time period, like 10,000 years, I know that's so long.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
It's twice current human civilization. Like,
nothing stays the same for 10,000 years. So, like, I mean, there is, like, a level of suspension of disbelief that you have to do. But, I mean, is it...
And to be fair, the books are like that too, right? Like, Frank was just like, I don't know, it's fucking 20,000 years in the future. Who cares, Yeah. And it, like, when you think about it, it doesn't, like, actually make sense that much time has passed and, like, things are so similar.
But when
timeline's always been kind of iffy.
When Frank jumps forward in time by thousands of years, his universe is radically different each time. It's like,
does
oh
change.
yeah,
The
there's
structure.
like a fish speaker bureaucracy now, and like the Atreides and the Harkonnens don't really exist in that form anymore, and there's the scattering, and like there are dramatic changes, and that's I think why Frank jumps forward. Frank also didn't care about the lore very much. Like, I think part of why Frank jumped forward was because he didn't have to remember all of whatever he said about how the universe was thousands of years ago. He's like, yeah, I don't care. Like, shut up, nerds. We're 2,000 years in the future. I can do what I want. I can play with my toys in a different way. Whereas Brian and Kevin, they go back 10,000 years. And yeah, things are like largely the same, except they explain, oh, this is where the Sooks came from, and this is where the Swordmasters came from. And they have to explain every single different thing. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think that it is way too stagnant because... what's the point of going back 10,000 years if it's the same? And I think that's a problem with a lot of similar prequels. This is a problem with lots of prequels. Like, this is a problem with Star Wars when they go back to the Star Wars prequels. It's a problem with 40K. Like, I don't know how much into 40K you guys are, but there is this, like, 50-book-long prequel series before 40K called The Horus Heresy. And
39K.
Read it. It's the 30K universe, and so it's kind of like, what is the Warhammer universe like 10,000 years prior to 40K? And the answer is, it's pretty similar. Yeah, pretty similar. Like, everything's still pretty grimdark, and everything. There's still big stompy warriors, and there's still. And again, I haven't read it, but I think it's a common criticism of the Horus Heresy that it's just it's so similar to 40K that it's like, why did we go back 10,000 years? And that's the feeling that I get from Dune. And I bring up 40K because 40K is largely inspired by
right. Interesting.
And I think it just speaks to I mean, if we're how many hundreds of years after the Butlerian Jihad, over 168 or something.
The show is 116 years.
It's just such a devastating conflict, though. This billions upon billions of lives were lost, and all infrastructure was toppled, and people are you just imagine that this is so devastating that it would take time to rebuild, to refocus, for these new institutions to come in and fill the gap, this huge void that computing technology left. So I think, we just think that that's a natural way, that this would definitely take some time in this interstellar society to regain order. The emperor needed to be, or the empire needs to be established to like do that, to at least have that consistency and a stabilization. But as far as the advancements of human talents, all that intense mental and physical conditioning and all these different factions, you just imagine that that would take some generations and to do that, to
Oh, yeah.
advance to that degree,
yeah.
to become superhuman. So that's it's a perfectly reasonable, I think, expectation to have. Another kind of no, I don't like prequels either for that exact reason.
Yeah,
It just
I was gonna
causes
say,
issues.
Yeah.
I am not the type of person that likes prequels like at all. Generally, I hate prequels. But I generally have more of a problem with prequels that are closer to like the original thing. Like I don't like it. Like for instance, Star Trek Discovery. Like I really hated it because it was like 10 years before like Captain Kirk, but the
Oh, yeah.
technology looked like it should have been like 200 years after Picard. So it was just like, why did you set it before? Yeah. I feel like a lot of times they make a lot of really dumb decisions with like
Yeah.
prequels and like the look of prequels, especially. So yeah, I generally hate prequels too.
That's also one of the challenges, especially in a universe like Dune. And one of my biggest complaints about a lot of Brian's lore is that he introduces ideas that then break the plot of Frank's books and require that a bunch of stuff just disappears. Lest we forget, Baron Harkonnen is given earplugs that
disease.
cancel the
They
voice.
cancel the voice.
Oh yeah, that. Ugh.
And it's like,
Doesn't he have a secret no globe at one point?
yeah, Piter gives him earplugs that block the
Like, how
voice.
do you have that?
And I'm like, so you lost them? Why are they absent in Dune? So creating these prequel series, like that's another kind of fear I have about this 6-episode run. Are they going to introduce stuff that then makes Villeneuve's stuff look weird? And like, oh, why don't they? Do they not have psychic Bernie powers?
Yes,
I
I
mean
was
that
just
guy's
thinking
got
that.
psychic Bernie powers.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
Why doesn't Paul have psychic Bernie powers? And it's like, because it's not right.
I was thinking that how are they going to make that make sense? Like, what is this, right? Because like if it's a psychic thing, why does no one in Villeneuve's Dune have any type of psychic fire thing?
Yeah.
But if it's a technology thing, then it makes more sense that this is like, oh, maybe they like really like honed in on and like banned this technology, and they were like, none of this. I don't know. I guess we're gonna have to see.
I was even bothered by, there was a title card or something, or maybe some captions on the bottom that said 10,000 something years before Paul Atreides.
Yeah.
I feel like, why'd you put that in there? Because Paul Atreides is not even a tiny glimmer at this point. Like, it does not relevant to what's going on at these events.
It
I
was
feel like
for
it's
the
just
normies.
needlessly, oh, this is tied to that. It's just a little bit forced in that regard to try to connect to something, but it doesn't connect though, really, apart from visually, and these are the same factions mostly. We didn't see
Yeah.
Mentats or Navigators, but essentially it's the same thing. I don't like when prequels do that, when they kind of do the Easter eggs of the thing that this is spin-off of. I feel like it should stand on its own, in its own little world
sure.
and story. Like Better Call Saul, that's a good example that I can think of. That's of a good prequel. I
Yeah.
know they're rare,
Unfortunately, I
but
think there's high odds that Timothy Chalamet is going to make a cameo at the end of the season.
High
with
odds?
his own camera.
Like a vision.
do you think people
Whoa.
thought
You're
he
putting
was the
money down on
blue-eyed?
that?
Yeah. How much shift? How much you want to bet?
Do you think
Yeah,
they would
about
think that the blue eyes would be Paul?
Yeah, I think
Saying
they're
that?
definitely like they're deliberate with the blue eye thing that they keep doing. They're deliberately saying, "Is that Timothy Chalamet? Is that the God Emperor? Is that Omnius?" Well, whichever answer you'd prefer, that's what you can believe. You know,
That's
Like,
what it
they're
feels
deliberately
like,
trying
right?
to please everybody. And we were talking about like Game of Thrones. I can't help but be reminded of House of the Dragon, the prequel TV show to Game of Thrones, because just like this show, it starts with like an awkward title card that says 137 years before Daenerys Targaryen, and this many, like it's trying to awkwardly situate itself in relation to the main series. And it also does this awkward juggling act where it's trying to appeal to fans of the original books, but it's also trying to stick with the canon of the other screen adaptations in that
Yeah.
universe. And it just becomes this sort of unholy love child of two different canons in a
Yeah.
way that it doesn't always work so good.
I will say in sort of a little bit devil's advocate just regarding the like before Paul Atreides. Paul Atreides is, according to Bene Gesserit planning, the father of their Kwisatz Haderach, right? Like the original, or he was supposed to be the mother of the Kwisatz Haderach, right? According to a 10,000 year breeding program. So I do see this as like, this is the beginning of this 10,000 year breeding program to create someone who can do X, Y, and Z. And maybe Travis, I think Abu, you and I talked about this in one of our episodes, but like maybe Desmond Hart is the reason why men are forbidden from being taught anything Bene Gesserit, because maybe he has this connection to the Bene Gesserit and it's going to be this like big thing. And that's why Paul is such a big deal 10,000 years later. So while I completely agree, Elaine, that like this needs to stand on its own, and it is better to just have it stand on its own and be great and not feel subservient to the fan service of like, you know, connecting it all the time to Dune. There is a direct lore connection between like the foundation of the sisterhood as we know it and Timothée Chalamet, his sweet, beautiful face being born against their wishes, right?
Yeah. I'm wondering what the odds are of a Timothée Chalamet lookalike showing up in episode 6.
Yeah, well, the thing they did in House of the Dragon,
Timothy.
they had like a CGI like Amelia Clarke bum appear at the end of season 2, and I wonder if we might get like a CGI Timothée Chalamet bum. If, like, they don't want to pay for the rights to Timothy's face because that'd cost too much, but they can sure as hell get some other guy who looks like him.
Just show a figure on Arrakis or something from the back.
I want the God.
My name's Tom Chevrolet.
I want like a quick flash of like the God Emperor's like face or body or like shadow or something. That would be.
I really don't think we're gonna get Leto in this series.
No, they gotta give it to us. They gotta give it to us, man. That'll get me coming back for season 2. Come on, give me no. Anyway, I was gonna say to shoot, what was I gonna say? No, you guys continue. I'll remember what I was gonna say later.
About the God Emperor?
I'm wondering with Desmond. He reminded me of Manfred in the Sisterhood of Dune book, being this sort of like violent ideological fanatic. And so they're different in that Manfred in the book is against all technology, whereas Desmond in this show seems to be pro-technology, just anti-Bene Gesserit. But I still wonder if he might, like, he's obviously like a messiah figure, right? Like, is this kooky guy who's been touched by God and who's preaching this ideology. So I wonder if Desmond will become one of those charismatic leaders that Dune warns us against, and if he'll become the leader of a popular movement.
Manfred is so annoying.
So fucking annoying.
He's the worst.
God.
Do we know that he's pro-technology? I kind of got the vibe.
It seems like it.
Desmond says to have.
Were we too quick to get rid of the machines or something like that?
Yeah.
He says some people are wondering. He says, he sits down with Jabbar and he says, some people are saying they were too quick. And at first you're like, oh, is he just... But what if he's reporting the smoke that will become the fire? He's saying, your empire is more in peril than you realize because some people are starting to slip back into being okay with technology. And then his speech to Pruitt sounds very anti-technology. Like, I am here to fight the war that people are becoming subservient again. And Pruitt goes, but the war against the machines is over. And he's like, nah, you think so? No. And that was how I read him, was like, he's not playing his cards openly. Like, he's not going, I'm anti-technology, but he stabbed that gecko in a very practiced way. He took out that Decepticon easily and with joy in his heart. So I don't know. I
took it maybe as maybe he was willing to use maybe illegal technology for like whatever his like goal was. Like, it was more important than not using it. If I can take out the Bene Gesserit using this technology, then I'm willing to use it. I don't know.
I mean, there's technology, just not.
What are you gonna say? Yeah,
just not intelligence. Yeah.
Like, because I mean, it gets kind of vague even in the Brian Herbert books. Like, what is banned and what's not. Like, I don't know. It seems like some things that aren't considered thinking machines like should be in. I don't know. But I was gonna ask too. So the Bene Gesserit like initiates, like the girls. There's one called Lila, I think, like the shorter, younger one. And there's a scene where Tula and Valya are like looking at girls, and she goes, "Oh, Lila, she's your favorite," to Tula, and Tula kind of gives this like look, and it's like this weird look. And then later we hear Lila talking, and she's like, "Oh, we don't know who our parents are, and I've been at the sisterhood my entire life."
Yeah.
So is Lila the granddaughter somehow of Dorothea, or is she Tula's daughter somehow? Those are my two like suspicions. I think that Lila is the daughter of either Tula or the granddaughter of Dorothea, because I think it's 30 years ago since Dorothea died.
Yeah.
So she couldn't really be her daughter, but Dorothea could have had a daughter, and this is her granddaughter potentially. I don't know.
Could
But
she
the look of
be-
Tula makes me think it's Tula's. What were you saying?
Could she be a daughter or granddaughter of Raquella and a sibling of Dorothea, maybe?
Potentially.
Yeah. Does that work timeline wise? I guess it's 30 years ago that Raquella died, but was she?
I don't know. I get the distinct impression that she's somehow related to Tula, just based off of the look that Tula gave in that scene. Like, if you really look at her expression, it seems like, and then even Valya says like, "Oh, if you want to protect her, like make her not weak." Like, why would she want to protect this specific girl unless like she was somehow related to her?
Maybe they're doing a Jessica thing. Like maybe Tula fell in love with some guy outside of the Bene Gesserit's approval, and she was allowed to keep Lila, but not allowed to treat her as a daughter.
Because the Bene Gesserit just don't like, they don't have the like parent thing. It's just not something they do. Like most of the time, they're not allowed to know who their parent is.
Right.
Like for instance, like Jessica is Gaius Helmohiam's daughter, but it's not like, I mean,
Well, kind of.
Yeah, according to Brian.
According to
Right. Allegedly.
potentially.
and
But,
and
it's
the
like,
Dune Encyclopedia, but it was something that Frank pushed back on himself.
Yeah,
we have
so-
Tanidia Neris.
But that was that's one of the like kind of like iffy like lore things that I kind of
Yeah,
like. I like,
yeah.
But yeah, I just and then you have like Audrey later on, like who doesn't really know like that Miles Tag is her dad until like later she like kind of figures it out.
Yeah.
So like they have like they're not allowed to know who their parents are for like
For
whatever
sure.
reason, because they have this thing against love, I guess, and attachment, which is
Yeah,
like
I mean,
weird
that's-
because I feel like they are always falling in love and getting attached.
Ain't that
That's
the
one
truth?
of the other interesting themes that they could delve into, because that's something that Frank wrestled with throughout the entire series, was that he was a hard ass and he believed that you had to be rational and tough to survive, but he also recognized that love is the meaning of living, and he wrestled that throughout the whole series. So like it's a really natural theme for them to address here, and I guess that's what they're doing with Princess Ynez, because like she's in love with Kieran, but she's joining the sisterhood, so that love will become forbidden. So I guess that's where they're going with that.
Yeah. They've also kind of like set some stage a little bit for Valya was talking to Tula, and they were saying kind of like, what do you value in people? Like the hard exterior is something you value, and so maybe what Valya is also connecting with. That could be interesting.
Because her conflict in the book is commitment to the sisterhood versus
Right.
commitment to House Harkonnen and to her brother. So I wonder if her if her sibling relationship with her beloved Harrow Whalecom Harkonnen is going to be her personal conflict.
It's gonna be so interesting to see how it.
Sorry,
like,
I don't want to
all
get you
plays out.
demonetized, Quinn.
She's like,
maybe we
I
know.
love him so
I'm
much.
Sorry,
but the
whale
smell-
seed.
I think we're far enough into the stream that YouTube stops caring after like 30 minutes. And I think.
Yeah.
We waited to the 31-minute mark to start talking about whale time.
But okay. Also, with Desmond Hart, like, don't you think like did you have to like kill them in such a painful way? Because the look
That
on
was messed
Desmond
up,
Hart's
yeah.
face, right? He did seem remorseful, so you can say that he seemed like he didn't want to do it, but like he kind of had to. Like that's what the look on his face kind of told me. But it's like, was this the only way to do it? Can you have slit his throat? Like,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think maybe I don't know if I read as much like remorse of doing it that way. He does seem like the kind of person who has a moral center, though. Like he has a compass that is maybe something that I don't agree with. Again, he's out here murking children, but he has a belief of what needs to happen for what he believes is right, and so
True.
for sure. I think there was like real sympathy in how he was talking to Pruitt, and like, yeah, I'd also be scared if that happened to my toy. Like there was some real compassion there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Desmond touched. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I don't understand. How are they going to explain it to the rest of the house? I wonder.
I know.
It looks
So
very
curious.
suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Have
not
they
the most
talked about the
subtle
Great
way
Conventions yet?
for someone to have an
I
accident.
don't think so. The Great Convention? No, I don't think so.
Look, sometimes kids just catch fire. You know, like we can't explain it.
Classic part
These
of
things
parenthood.
happen.
Just spontaneously
Spontaneous.
combusted.
Must have been
Perfectly
Exactly.
normal.
something in his diet. I don't know. Like,
Puberty.
these things happen.
Puberty went wrong.
Puberty. Yeah, I
really
thought it was
hope-
interesting how Desmond like touched his head with his fingers while
Yes.
Pruitt
Yeah.
was burning. It looked as though he was
Yeah.
like, you know, sending his psychic powers be
His
wheel, like
temple.
focusing was maybe what was going on, or he was like touching his secret Ixian implant that sets people on fire. Maybe it's a technology thing. You know,
Yeah.
who
I was
knows?
thinking maybe the implant's hurting. Like maybe this
Yeah.
activation of the thing is causing him pain,
It
and he's
hurts.
like, the power of God channeling through my head. And it's like, no, that's
Right.
it's a radio
Right.
antenna.
No, it's just a Elon Musk Neuralink. Buddy,
It's
like you're fucked.
One
Yeah, his
thing
expression,
I'm-
like, was it remorse or was it just physical
Pain.
discomfort at using his
headache.
power?
Yeah, I read
Maybe-
it as discomfort more. I read it as him like touching something here or just focusing really hard and him getting like a really annoying headache right here.
because he did walk away like he didn't give a fuck. But I will say, like, dude, I hope the next episode doesn't do that thing that TV shows do where they skip over the body being found and skip over like the
yeah.
initial reactions and explaining what happened. Because like I feel like that's so lazy. Like when something happens in like a movie or a show and then it skips way past everyone being explained what happened. I'm like, no, what was your reaction to this? I need to see your
Yeah.
initial reaction to seeing like this cooked child. Because
I
this
mean-
is so like out there and nothing else is burned. This has to be like the craziest thing that's happened in like forever. Like
Yeah.
inside of the Carino Palace.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah. To explain
So,
it in a
like-
way that does not, because the Duke Richese he's not gonna be pissed. So like, how is this gonna? It's intriguing to think about like what's this gonna play out politically. This is gonna be very tumultuous moving forward with Carino between them. I don't think he was planning ahead that far. It is a shame too because we kind of connected with this character, I think, and the mystery surrounding him. And I think maybe they wanted to just do the thing where, oh, this is Dune. Nobody's good. Nobody's only bad. And everyone is this great, morally gray area. Seems like they really just wanted to, pound that into the audience that this is the universe that we're in now. Maybe a little just overt to a degree in that regard. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
I do, to your point, Quinn, I think like there's a lot, most of us connect with these stories. And I think this is what we connect with Frank's books is like, there's a lot of humanity and there's a lot of that like real emotion. And you have to imagine, the Duke of Ricchese finding his son, burned and his boy, that's my boy, my son.
Look how they
I
massacred
mean, why not
the boy.
poison? Poison is a thing that is common use. Poison snoopers are quite common.
Yeah.
It
So
just
I-
seems extra, like right, like the burning alive thing. It just seems extra.
It's
Like
so
there better
extra,
be
right,
a reason
right.
that
He's a
it was
theater kid.
burning, right?
Yeah, I mean, folks in the chat are saying maybe they'll blame the Decepticon toy because everyone already is skeptical of technology.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
exploded in
right,
Pruitt's
you're right,
pocket
you're
like
right.
Oh,
a sense
There
of
you go,
reality.
and weirdly burned every inch of his body, but don't think about it.
Tribal
Yeah,
Life
don't think about it
says-
too much.
Tribal Life says, since the show is about the Bene Gesserit and their rise to power, what do you think about Desmond being a fanatical pawn under a Missionar Protectiva scheme by the Bene Gesserit? I
Oh.
don't think so. Or maybe. What do you guys think about that?
Oh.
I don't think
don't-
that's what they're going for.
That
Because, I mean,
feels
the
far-fetched,
Sisterhood hasn't
yeah.
existed for very long at this point.
Yeah.
And if they had, like, they would have noticed. Oh, yeah, well, I don't know. You go.
Have they
It's not
started
clear
that
where
point with the
I was gonna
missionarian?
say,
Yeah.
it's not clear where the Missionar Protectiva is at this
Right.
point in time.
Right.
Like, I don't think that, like, that's
Right now, they
started
just
to the
want to get a
extent.
Bene Gesserit on the throne. That seems to be the only that's
Yeah.
their immediate goal or ultimate goal, apparently, to stop the
Yeah.
Arafel.
Right. And even that is quite simplistic, right? Like we know the Bene
Yeah.
Gesserit don't operate in that way by the time of Paul Atreides. They
Yeah.
much more prefer to operate from the shadows and to be adjacent to power.
And this is the lesson that teaches them that, supposedly.
Yeah.
I mean, if they
So
can see
this
it,
still feels like a pretty young and immature sisterhood that
Well,
maybe
also-
isn't
Because
as
Raquella was-
sophisticated.
Raquella is the first Reverend Mother.
Hmm.
Like,
Yes.
so
Although-
they haven't had time to seed legends across the universe yet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So zooming out, 10,000 years ago is when the in Sisterhood of Dune, the Orange Catholic Bible had like just been published, and then following that, the Bene Gesserit write their Azar book, and then following that is their like I think the beginning of their Missionaria Protectiva, but that's
Yeah.
also post the breeding program with this idea that 10,000 years from now we're going to have a Messiah that everyone will fall in line underneath. But I think that's also where this like complicated timeline is a little strange. I was going to say, Shift, did they even mention that she's awakened? Like that seems to just not be in the show at all yet.
Yeah,
Right?
it's pretty
Yeah.
glaring that they haven't mentioned other memories and they haven't talked about Reverend Mother powers at all. They've talked about truth saying a million times. Like 20 times they said,
Yeah.
oh, truth sayers. But they haven't mentioned Reverend Mother or other memories.
I will say they have, and I thought they hadn't at first until I went back and looked at it again in the scene when Lila is talking to the other girl. She says, and I don't know if this means that they haven't mentioned other memory, but she says specifically the Reverend Mothers don't tell us who our parents are. So she says Reverend Mothers because I was wondering like is Valia the only Reverend Mother or are there more? But she definitely says Reverend Mothers. But you guys are right. They haven't talked about like other memory and all that stuff. So I wondered like if that's going to come into play at some point because like a part of the Brian Herbert books is like they're trying to find out how to make
Yeah.
more Reverend
haven't figured
Mothers
that out
because
yet,
Raquel they don't know how to do it. So there should be Reverend Mothers at this point in time, but I don't know. It's I don't know how many, or it remains to be seen how many of them are.
Because
So,
Kasha's a Reverend Mother, right? Did I hear that?
I guess.
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know if I heard.
I believe
It's just-
so.
Okay.
That is something they could address with flashbacks because it's a really natural dramatic opportunity to look at the transformation into a Reverend Mother by taking the poison drug. Like they did a great job of doing that with Jessica in Villeneuve movies and with, Paul taking the water of life. It's something recognizable. It's something climactic. I think it's an easy opportunity to show that with Valia potentially, or
Yeah.
Tula, or with one of them in this show.
I do think we will see it in flashbacks because thinking of the trailer, there seem to be some very clear scenes of sisters or acolytes or young Bene Gesserit like having seizures and having
Spice agony kind of,
spice
yeah.
agony style things and
Yeah.
visions of like drowning in other bodies and being surrounded by like hostile faceless people. So I think we're certainly going to get more flashback sequences. This one sequence of young Valia and Dorothea was not it. I think we're going to continue to come back. And I think that is where we might get some reference to Reverend Mother stuff. I don't know how deep it will go or how central it will be.
We also did see in the trailer one of that flush of blue ink in water that like is the spice agony from Villeneuve's movie. They had the same effect in the trailer. And actually, Abogado who commented, "Will we see the Reverend Mother who implemented the Missionaria Protectiva in Arrakis, the one who implanted the Lisan al-Gaib myth?" And I'm like,
Ooh.
oh, that would be a very interesting thing to see. Also because I feel like we're going to end up on Arrakis for a bit.
Yeah, they keep mentioning
Totally.
it.
They keep
I
mentioning
mean,
it. Yeah.
They've established that Desmond is like this unusually badass guy who's survived on Arrakis for an exceptional number of tours, and I
Yeah.
think they've also shown us this blue-eyed woman at the Death Sticks Club. So
Yes.
I think we're going to see some Fremen, right, or free men as they're called here, and it's a very it's an easy fan servicey thing to do. So I think they'll probably show that it maybe even through flashbacks that Desmond was like taught and trained by the Fremen, and there is kind of there's that character Ishanti in the book who might kind of be analogous.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see some Fremen stuff, and I just hope that it's not too much of a retread of old ground, because that's how it feels in Sisterhood. Like there's this very lame plotline where Vorian goes to Arrakis and learns to survive on the desert, but it's just 10 times... It's weightless. It has none of the gravitas that Paul has learning Arrakis. So I hope they do it differently, but I think we will see Fremen and worms on Arrakis and such.
I recently...
Someone says... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I'll just read this.
Go for it.
Sorry. Someone says, can we talk about Desmond possibly being a face dancer? I don't think he's a face dancer because I don't think that Tleilaxu technology is to the point, at this point in time, where they could create face dancers. I was saying Gola because I feel like maybe they could have like made like a Gola at some point, and that maybe like it's a weak Gola and he's gonna like die after like 6 months or something, and they haven't quite figured it out or something like that. But a face dancer, I feel like is too advanced. I don't think they're there yet.
We did. Someone commented earlier. There is a problem with the Gola theory, which is that the Golas don't have a reliable way to make in memories. Yeah. So he wouldn't remember himself as Desmond Hart.
But maybe they're just not doing that because that's something we established in Dune Messiah, and maybe they're just not fucking doing it.
But hear me out. Maybe they just don't care.
Wow.
I don't know.
Like,
that is the whole. That is the
Herbert
hole in the
attitude we
theory.
need more of around
That's the
here,
hole
am I
in my
right?
theory. I will agree. I
What's the
acknowledge
point
that.
of making a Gola clone of a character we don't know? Like, it's only meaningful to make a clone when it's like, oh, that guy's the same as that other guy. We don't know the other guy. We don't know the original Desmond, so it's not really like emotionally impactful.
Oh,
True.
I do love that theory, though.
Okay.
There's a really small thing I found was interesting at the start when they were showing the Bene Gesserit praying and like practicing religion, because in the books the Bene Gesserit have a very cynical view of religion. They see it as a tool to manipulate people, but they don't actually believe in religion themselves. But there's also, we see from how the Bene Gesserit operate, and it also says in one of the appendices that even though the Bene Gesserit say that they are not really a religious order, everything they do is mystical and has a religious undertone. They have the holy books. And so that's one of the really, really interesting paradoxes of the Bene Gesserit to me, is that they say they're above petty mysticism, but actually they practice it. So that's another interesting theme that I would like to see them explore in this show.
Isn't that an excerpt? Like Frank Herbert in the Religion of Dune, maybe, or appendices, where they're kind of pseudo-religious. He says that they would call themselves not a religious institution, but the way they operate is wholly religious or something like that.
Yeah,
Actually,
in the Religion appendix.
I really like that quote that they use in the show that's from the Religion of Dune. Thou shalt not disfigure the soul.
Yeah, I like that.
So good.
I've always liked that quote because I feel like that's so... It's something that people can live by, because I feel like what it's saying is like, don't do things that make you less of a human. Don't do things that destroy your humanity. You can grow and evolve, but maintain what you are. And that kind of says what Leto says in God and Dune, not in Heretics of Dune.
Yeah.
When Odrade finds like the writings, and it says he says, what is survival if you do not survive whole? If you lose what is what fundamentally makes you who you are. So I just think there's so much wisdom in those Frank Herbert books, right?
Yeah,
it's just so good. Yeah. But
I do feel like it's being played a little bit more cheaply than that, though. Like, because we see the Dorothea group who is against the Valia group, right? Valia's going, we should do this no matter what. Dorothea and her followers, her friends, kind of recite those lines from the Orange Catholic Bible and what's the Manfred Toronto line? The mind of man is holy. Point is, I think the scene too, I laughed at it and I wrote it in my notes. I think I wrote "fuck your prayers" when she storms into the room and slaps the book out of the woman's hand, and I'm like, wow, rude to that one woman. I mean, I get the point to the room, but like. That one person
doesn't need your prayers. Like, that was really shit. It's like, geez, I was just trying to help. Like,
so I see that as the like Valia part of the sisterhood being very anti, religion and prayers, and then the Dorothea group being more religion and prayers. And maybe we've moved on from that, but I would love for for that to be like an ongoing theme in this series.
Well, the
It'd be
struggles
Yeah.
in the sisterhood are a Frank Herbert thing too. Yeah, we the heretics of Dune. It quite literally refers to the heretics inside of the sisterhood, the
Right.
zealots / heretics. So yeah, the Bene Gesserit fighting amongst each other, I feel like is an important like part of like the way they operate in the Dune series.
Totally.
Even
Yeah.
though it weakens them at every point. Like when the Bene Gesserit fight, it's like not good. But
Maybe that's why they
but
try
what
to compartmentalize everything.
Yeah, but I will say, the death of Kasha, like when she is burning up, we talked about this on you guys' podcast. Like her last act is to kind of like show Valia what's happening to her, and it was reminding me, oh God, what's the old crone witch from Heretics? Xuan Yu. I forget her
Xuan Yu.
name.
Shuang-
Yeah.
Shuang
like
Yu.
like when she dies,
girl.
her last act is to help the sisterhood too. Like
Yeah.
she's against Audrey the entire time, against Lucilla the entire time, and her like last thing is like, I'm still gonna help out my girls, because that's how like on it they are. That's how like for the cause they are. So
Yeah.
I thought it was cool that like in her dying breath, even though she was suffering so much and could barely like move or talk, she was trying in her last minute to get to Valia so you can see what's happening to me, so you can make whatever analyzation that you need to do and try and begin to figure out what's happening. So
Yeah, that's very
that was
cool.
cool to see.
The burning
Yeah.
truth.
The burning truth.
They need
I
to
hope that
deepen-
doesn't suck later on. I hope that is satisfying and not cringe, because that can be cringe. That could be cringe potentially.
Yeah.
Burning truth.
I mean,
But we'll see.
I found it to be a little. I was like, this can't be the burning truth, literally, right? Like, we're taking that literally. That's not
Gotta be more to the
metaphorical.
burning truth.
Desert Spring Tears. Desert Spring
What were you
Tears.
gonna say? AltshiftX?
I think at the end of this episode, Valia saw the burning truth. I think we will know next episode what the burning truth is, and it might be we've got to make the Kwisatz Haderach. I mean, Paul doing the Gom Jabbar in the Villeneuve movie that was full of burning imagery. I think that's a connection. But what I was going to say is that I think I agree that they need to deepen like what is the schism within the Bene Gesserit about. Because in the Sisterhood of Dune book, it's painfully simplistic, where Dorothea is like, computers are bad, and Valia's like, computers are
I'm gonna
good,
go
and
live
that's
on this
why
other planet.
that's what the whole thing's about. And it's like, really? Whereas in the show, there's like a few different ways they could go. I mean, Dorothea was apparently going to like destroy the breeding records
Seems
in
like it.
this episode. Seems like that was what's happening. So I really want them to go into why that was the case. And one of the things they could do is explore Frank's idea, which is making a plan and a prophecy can backfire, and convincing yourself that this is the only way to proceed can backfire. And that's something that I think that they could focus on in this show, is tell the story, because ultimately that's what happens. The Bene Gesserit have the plan to create the savior, and they accidentally create a giant worm tyrant. Oops. So
Yeah.
I hope that that's where they're going here, and I hope that Desmond is ultimately kind of correct when Desmond says, hey, it's kind of bad that we're letting the witches make a 3,000-year-old worm. Let's not do that.
Right. Yeah.
So there
I
could be a
think-
real ironic, tragic ending. Could be cool.
I also
That's why Desmond-
I like that
you
because
can-
it leaves everything morally gray. To Elaine's earlier
Yeah.
point, like that's one of the hallmarks of the Dune universe is that even the baddies are like, no, they're not. They have a place where they're coming from. So I like that.
That's-
too. Yeah.
That's why Desmond is kind of like, I think, the most interesting character in the entire show, because like it's hard not to agree with him. Like if you know what the Bene Gesserit are all about, it's like they definitely are manipulating everything and trying to control everyone. And
Because
I don't know
the
if that's
entire-
worth killing a child, but that's what they're doing.
The entire Dune series by Frank is basically an FU to his nun teachers who raised him
Yeah.
and taught him, because young Frank was frustrated by these imperious, black-clad witches, Catholic nuns, who raised him. And so,
Jesuits.
like, most of Frank's Dune books are Paul and then Leto saying, like, F you, Mom, you can't control me. The Bene Gesserit, nah, you're a bunch of dumb witches. But nah, I still love you. And that's why they are the center of every book. So I feel like Desmond is maybe embodying that energy, or should embody that energy. It's like, yeah, you don't know everything, Mom. That's kind of what it is. Well,
I mean, it's-
especially if his mum literally is a Bene Gesserit, which could be the case. That could be the reason for the black cloth. That
That'd
could
be such a
be
good idea.
Desmond's grudge, is that his
Interesting,
mother
yeah.
or his family or his lover died at the Bene Gesserit's hands, possibly as a result of taking the Reverend Mother drug that was killing all of those Bene Gesserit acolytes in the books.
Yeah.
So
He's
that
just
could be
holding
what's
around
going
a
on.
piece of her robe, just like carrying it around.
Which is so like childlike and sad and kind of pathetic to like be having that childlike. Yeah, no, that could work.
Okay.
That could work.
Yeah.
I think we all agree like Desmond's character is like probably like the strongest character in the show so far. What do you guys feel about that? I like the Emperor too. I think the Emperor is pretty interesting in that whole dynamic between him, Desmond, and Kasha and his wife. That whole Carino thing was super interesting to me. What are you guys feeling on like the characters? Favorites, least favorites?
Yeah, Desmond. Anytime Desmond was on the screen, he's so mysterious. It's just, and we don't know anything basically about him. And the sandworm attack, it just sparks the imagination. My brain's going wild. But in particular with the scenes with the Emperor, I think were particularly compelling. And then his scenes, I guess the very ending there was pretty climactic and devastating. And that was like the true hook for me. Like all of that drama just sparked all these theories that connected with me. Finally, hopefully there's more of that. I think there's tons of potential there if they can maintain their focus on what the strongest aspects of this episode was moving forward. Hopefully there'll be more on the way. There is a concern there that nothing's for sure on HBO Max, I think in particular for streaming shows. So hopefully they'll take some feedback and stick to what works, what's the best, what's most strongest, and plot lines that are connecting with people. Because he's the most fascinating part of this show for me. I like the mature Tula and Valia, though. I think at the end, especially when the whole thing with Kasha and her plans are gone up in smoke, I think that's some potential there for impending drama and chess moves.
That was a good scene. Like I liked like Valia kind of just being like, "Screw you, I know what I'm talking about." Like I'm the one that's gonna see the burning truth, and it kind of like showed like maybe slow down, being a little arrogant right here. Maybe like listen, and I wonder if she'll be remorseful in the next episode that she didn't maybe like listen a little bit sooner. I don't know what she could have done about it really, but I wonder if that'll be a part of it.
Very Harkonnen like, very very ambitious. She wanted too much too fast, possibly, and this may have sparked the plan to, okay, we've done too much. We need to revert back to the shadows. Our plans need to be done across centuries. Maybe that's what this whole thing will lead to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've got a Dune prophecy of my own.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I prophesy. I see it. Arafel. In 2026, they're going to cancel Dune prophecy after 2 seasons because the viewership is low and the budget is high. I see his eyes, David Zaslav. He sees it in
No,
budgetary
not Tyrion
cuts
himself, David Zaslav.
yeah, that's it. The tyrant at Warner Brothers Discovery. Taking the
Very
budget.
well possible. It's
Yeah.
very.
If this
because
was
we only got 6
Amazon or
episodes.
Apple, I'd feel better or more secure. But HBO Max kind of has a reputation of you never know if it's going to last or not.
You know
know, I
why
didn't
Travis
even-
Fimmel is in this show is because they cancelled Raised by Wolves. Raised by Wolves was a sci-fi series on HBO that had a great 2 seasons and then got cancelled. And it's hilarious because Travis is playing the same character in both shows.
Yeah.
If you watch Raised by Wolves,
Yes.
he's also this eccentric weirdo who's touched by a supernatural power. He has a mysterious technological weapon that kills people. I would tell you to go and watch Raised by Wolves to see how similar it is, but you can't because they deleted it. They removed
they-
it.
Oh, they
Took
deleted it?
off?
Yeah,
Are you
it's removed.
serious?
They did,
That's
so you better watch
crazy.
Dune Prophecy while you can, because it might go the same way as Travis's last show and get deleted.
Holy
Although that's
crap,
good, because then you
That's
can
a
just play
shame.
the same character again in his next HBO show.
Yeah,
It's the perfect
You
grip.
know-
make a damn
I ha-
career out of it.
Yeah.
I had no idea that this was 6 episodes when I watched the first episode. Like I was shocked by
Oh, really?
the 6-episode thing after the first episode. I was like, I thought it was like 8 or 10. Like seasons of things are getting so short.
Way too short.
I'm
like,
worried
what
this
is
will feel
happening?
like part 1 of a season rather than
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
entire thing, because that's what House of the Dragon season 2 felt like. Due to budget cuts, they cut down the number of episodes, and so maybe something similar could happen to the show. Not to be
Yeah.
a downer, but I had to offer my dark prophecy to y'all.
I mean, it happened with like Invincible, right? The cartoon, like they kind of cut it weirdly mid-season, and it also that's how I felt finishing the book Sisterhood of Dune, where I was like, wait, wait, nothing's resolved. The book's not done. I just read 1,000 pages and nothing's been resolved. So hopefully, oh my gosh, hopefully.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like the ending's not out there. Press only got the first 4 episodes. And
Yep.
that's pretty rare. Like I work in the industry and I get press screeners for stuff all the time. And if a show is good, like I recently covered The Penguin, and HBO gave me all 8 episodes of The Penguin all at once, like weeks in advance. And not doing that for a show is a bit of a red flag, because they're either not confident in it, right? They don't want press to just have a bad season of a show and just shit on it before it ever has a chance to get out there. Or they will hold something back. Disney is notorious for doing this because of the interconnected MCU and all of the like big potential reveals that they're always holding on to. They will hold back like the finale, and they won't give you the finale access because of some big reveal. So I'm like dying and curious to know why they held back those last 2 episodes in a 6-episode season. Why not give episodes 5 and 6 to the press?
Maybe
Is
it's
it
the big
because it's
reveal.
bad, or is it because there's a huge Leto 2 reveal that's going
Please
to
just
blow
be a big
Quinn's
reveal.
mind?
Or
I'm just
because they
super
want to
optimistic.
hide the fact
Look.
that it doesn't feel like a climax or an ending.
You know, this used to happen to me every single season of Game of Thrones too, where it would be like season 5 would come out and I'm like, oh, that wasn't great, but season 6, that trailer, I'm so good. Season 6 come out, season 7, oh, that's gonna be so good, and yeah. So I don't know, I get overly excited about things, so I hope that this doesn't like severely disappoint me. I feel like I've been pretty even-headed on it. But someone says, in the books, prescience is limited to males, while the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers have other memories. Is the show departing from the book canon there? No, prescience isn't limited to males in the books. So,
I mean, the Navigators have prescience.
yeah, it's not
Dune
limited to
Tarot.
males.
And
Yeah.
we only see like hugely
Yes.
like Paul and Leto, but
I think it's the levels of prescience that varies, and yeah,
Right, exactly.
and Alia's got weird powers too. Like
Yeah.
it's
he's
not
an outlier.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
she's
that's why I say that Frank plays it fast and loose with
For sure.
his lore and his canon. Because yeah, like Aaliyah does the thing where she like speaks to Paul in the future by
Leaves him a
planting
voicemail.
a sentence in the past. Yeah, she does like temporal voicemail, and that just
Oh,
never
yeah.
happens again in the series.
Yeah.
So like, that's one of the ironies of the Brian and Kevin books to me, is that Brian and Kevin sort of slavishly imitate the lore of Frank's books, when Frank did not stick to his own lore in his books. He was constantly just coming up with new ideas and said it 1,000 years later. And yeah, there's dominatrices from space, and yeah, there's cat people and chair dogs. Like, yeah, man. Whereas Kevin and Brian are, from what I've read, seem to be sticking more to the established lore in a way that
What the
Frank
heck
never did.
is the Dune Tarot? You know what I mean? Like, what is even
Yeah,
that?
exactly.
Like, how does it
Yeah.
even work? Like,
Dune
what
Tarot's so sick.
is this?
Right.
That always confused me. I'm just like, this, because it's so vague. It's
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
vague. So I don't know.
And to your point, Shift, it comes up in Messiah and then practically never comes up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and even in Messiah, it plays like the tiniest of roles.
But also in Messiah, it's confirmed it canonically allows people to glimpse the future a little bit. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, what a great thing that'll be around forever and ever and ever. And then it disappears in Children of Dune.
Yeah, just Frank always toying around with new ideas.
Yeah.
I was reading Frank Herbert's biography written by his son Brian, and it sounds like Frank genuinely believed in ESP. He genuinely believed in like psychic powers being a
Predicted
thing.
the
Because like it
cards,
was
right?
the 60s and there was actual like ESP research happening,
Yeah,
and so
it's big.
I think that is part of the context for why these weird psychic powers keep appearing. And the
think a
ideas
lot
of like
of-
race consciousness and all these like weird ideas that he throws out are part of what he was reading at the time, which was in vogue at the time.
There's a lot of like
old
war and
sci-fi.
sexuality.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, a lot of old sci-fi books from like the 60s and 70s just like have psychic stuff just like as a part of it. Like Foundation, like Mentalic people are
Oh,
just
yeah.
like a part of it. Like Ringworld, Larry Niven. Like there's a girl named Tila Brown in that series. Her special power is that just she's lucky. She's just like
Yeah.
lucky, and that's just like it. She's just and there's psychic people in that. So I feel like that was just like a thing in sci-fi in like the 60s and 70s. Like they psychic, and you don't have to explain it. But right now, I feel like nowadays we look at stuff like that, and it's more like that's magic. Like that's not super you don't think sci-fi when you think psychic powers. I feel like nowadays, but
Yeah.
I don't know. And someone says, "What do you think about Ynez? She seems so naive, especially with her threat to Pruitt. What's her angle, or is she simply a means for the Bene Gesserit? What do you
I
guys
will
think about
say
Ynez?
I will say
Ynez.
I think she might be my favorite character.
I was going to say the same. Yeah.
Because I feel like, and Abu, I think this comes up from our conversation about her, but
Yeah.
the fact
Yeah, finish
that
my sentence. The fact that
she
is very
fatty. She's
Yeah.
hot. She's really hot.
That's where I was going. Let's go.
Let's go. Our podcast is intellectual. No, so we were talking about how the masks slip when she says to Pruitt, "If you do that again, I'll stab you myself, you little shit."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that moment, and her also saying to Natalia, the Empress, she was like, "Oh, I can also negotiate on my own terms." Like she is giving major signs that she is much more of an agent of her own, like her own planning and plotting already, and she hasn't even been to the Bene Gesserit, school yet. So I think she's excellent. I mean, I think she has a lot of potential to kind of uncover this character. It's very cool.
Here's a question: what's the timeline of this show, this first season? How do you guys think that we're going to stay within this same short period of time, or do you think we're going to jump decades at all, or do you think we're going to move past this era in history at all over the course of the show, like even at the end? What do you guys think? We're going to stay in this, like, just tell me what you guys think.
1,000 years forward every episode.
Let's do it.
Right.
Let's go.
Make it foundation.
Yeah. Or do you think we're done with the jumps after like the 30 year? We're just going to go like maybe have some flashbacks and then come back to this 30-year time period?
I think it's going to be that. I think we're going to be anchored to Valia in the current age. And I really think, if anything, what they will accomplish over the course of this 6 episodes is an arc for Desmond, right? It feels to me unlikely that Desmond survives by episode 6. And I think that would require us to stay in the current timeline, right? I think this will be a story of Valia facing the dangers posed by Desmond, whatever those dangers are, technological, psychic powers, whatever the dangers end up being. And so
I think
I
that's a good
don't see a
prediction.
timeline jump coming.
That's a good prediction, Desmond not surviving season 1, because he might be one of the more expensive actors in this show. And he can make his mark. I mean, he's kind of like the Ned
Or Mark
Stark of the
Strong,
show,
maybe.
right? He's the recognizable guy who lures people in, but then he dies dramatically and memorably and then disappears. I think that's a good prediction.
Also, because we see in the preview, it seems like Valia telling him to take his knife out of his, take out your blade, and taking out his knife to pull the same thing she did to Dorothea.
He's got earplugs in though.
He's got dang it! He's got the magic earplugs. That would be the worst bit of lore to bring into the adaptation. But that moment, I was saying to Abu, like, it seems so unlikely that we're seeing the final moment of Desmond Hart in the preview. So probably this is going to be a moment where he resists the voice, and it's the first time we've ever seen someone do that. And so then that sets him up as like he is the one to overcome. He is the threat that the Bene Gesserit needs to put down before they can be a little bit sure of their plans moving forward. So I do like that idea of him maybe being the sort of like big bad for Valia. And I think it would be very appropriate to Dune for us to have mixed feelings about it at the end. Like I was always saying, the challenge of Fade Rautha in a film adaptation is that we should be a little bit enamored by him. Like we should want him to win a little bit. And that would be the most interesting telling of Fade Rautha versus Paul Atreides. I think similar here. I think we should get to the end and be like, oh, I actually really like Desmond. He's fun. I mean, he kills kids sometimes, but he's like fun. And then he dies and we go, oh man, okay, cool, Dune,
With
You mentioned
with a show like,
Foundation.
oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You guys mentioned Foundation, and I think Foundation's such a great comparison to Dune in a lot of ways, but the character of the mule in the Foundation,
Yes.
who's like the one guy who the plans and the prophecies can't control, the one agent of chaos who can't
That's
be
a great
contained,
analogy.
and that's a great comparison to Siona Atreides and God Emperor, who can't
yeah.
be predicted. And also, I think Desmond has a bit of mule energy around him because he's like a
100%.
spanner in the works. He's like the guy who's like, no, screw your plan. I'm setting this child on fire. And everyone's like, what? Like, he's unpredictable. And I think
Yeah.
that's why he's the most magnetic character in the show. You don't know what he's going to do next, and he's there to ruin everyone's day. So I am very excited to see what he does.
The dilemma with a show like this is there's so many potential things that could happen, but like so little time for like anything to like take place. Like I have all these ideas about where it could potentially go, but then I have to think like, Jesus, there's only 5 episodes.
5 more
left. So
episodes,
it's like,
yeah.
what can they? So the real question is, what do they actually have time to do? in
There's
this,
so
like,
many
little period of
meaty
time?
themes that they could spend entire seasons looking into, like with love,
Absolutely.
technology, prophecy, politics, the relationships. There's so many huge things, and they've only got 6 episodes in this season, so God, it's going to be tough to choose what to cover and then to cover it in sufficient depth in this time.
You know, I feel like it's sad, but I think you're probably right. I feel like we're probably gonna get 2 seasons of this show,
Yeah.
and then I think it's probably gonna. It depends. I feel like it really depends on like what the reaction to it is when it all pans out. But I don't know if this is a show that's gonna connect with people in the same way that like you have Game of Thrones. Everybody wants the next Game of Thrones to happen, but I feel like I don't know if this is that. I feel like this is a show that Dune fans are gonna like, or that some Dune fans are gonna like. Not all of them. People are already like kind of divided on it. But I think it's a show that some Dune fans are gonna like. It's a show that some Dune fans aren't gonna like, and it's a show that I think a lot of people are just gonna kind of be like, it was okay. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
mixed across the board.
But then
But
again,
you
I
know
haven't
what
seen
this
the next
show-
5 episodes. I don't want to be too
Yeah.
negative, but I gotta see
Yeah.
5 more episodes.
Right. But also
I'm
to your
intrigued.
point, like a show being okay in the modern media landscape is a
Is
death
death.
sentence, right?
Yeah.
Like shows can't be just okay anymore, and they can't have this time to breathe over 3-4 seasons of growth. You know, you're not going to get a Parks and Rec situation where the first season is total ass, and then the rest of it is spectacular television because it had the chance to just keep going and keep getting better.
I was just thinking about that. You know, I'm a big Star Trek fan. I wasn't like watching Star Trek in the 90s because I was too young, but I've like read about like what was happening. Like when they brought back Star Trek The Next Generation, they were like getting hate mail from like the fans. Like the first season is so rocky. It's got some really bad episodes in that first season, but it still had time to grow. They gave it a chance to develop, and they made 7 seasons, and they made a lot of good stuff on that show. But I feel like the landscape is so different.
Yeah, we
Whereas
just don't
right
live
now,
in
if you're
that
not
world
hooking with
anymore.
that first season, then like you're probably out of here. You're probably like out of here. Like I've
Well,
seen
shows
so many,
used to be
like, good
20
shows.
episodes.
Yeah, but I've seen so many good shows get canceled. 1899, like I was hooked into 1899 on Netflix. It was from the creators of Dark, 1 season, canceled.
That was on
many
the boat,
things
right?
Constellation.
What'd you say?
That was on the boat, right? The kind of boat.
Yeah, the boat. Yeah, it was like this weird boat sci-fi thing. But yeah, so many things get canceled after like 1 season now. So I feel nothing is safe.
Well,
Nothing is
especially
safe.
Netflix. I was going to say, let's count our blessings that this isn't a Netflix adaptation, because then it's
Yeah.
like good or bad, it gets canceled. Like
They
it
really
could
don't
be
give a fuck.
the greatest thing ever, and they're like, maybe not.
We need to give another $100 million to Stranger Things season, whatever the fuck.
Season 19. Yeah.
They killed Westworld as well. But
Oh,
you know, if nothing else, if this show does get cancelled, at least it provides a lot of great B-roll for our YouTube videos, right? I mean, we finally got some high-quality, high-budget,
Yeah.
well-made footage of the Bene Gesserit being Bene
Walking
Gesserit.
around.
Hey, look, it's
Yeah.
the Lucius Secundus.
Your
All
budget.
of our YouTube videos, we've finally got some good footage to
Right.
use.
No more
Fantastic.
Ken
Please.
Burns on a fucking screenshot from 35 years ago.
Exactly.
You don't have to go to DeviantArt to find some questionable illustrations when you need a picture of the...
Shift, your budget's looking so good these
Yeah.
days. My God.
That's all thanks to Zaslav.
Well, I'm gonna have to head out
Daddy's
here
ass.
soon.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna have to
All
head
right,
out. I had
see.
such a great time though, talking about nerding out with all the deep lore stuff with y'all. Thank you so much for
It was
having
good
me on.
talking
This
to
is a
you.
lot of fun. And in the
Always
chat
a
too.
pleasure.
Shout out to y'all.
Always a pleasure.
See you later.
Alrighty.
Good to
Take
meet
care.
you. See ya.
Mhm.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, geesh. People were saying Stranger Things rocks in the chat. I wasn't trying to diss Stranger Things, people. It was just me.
Yeah, the first 2
No,
seasons were
on the
great,
internet,
but you know
if you
something
say
should
that-
end.
Everyone knows that if you say that you like something on the internet, you're actually saying that you dislike every other thing.
Yeah, that's true.
You're only allowed to like one thing. That is the
right.
rules. Yeah.
Exactly.
I will. So Luna Cascade did a good donation thing, and I agree. Said that the interactions between Ynez and the Kieran Atreides felt very. There it is. Yeah, felt very CW. Had to roll my eyes. The attraction was handled poorly compared to the introduction of Desmond. I agree, especially because they had the whole club scene and the I don't know the script around the sparring of the like follow the body, then you'll always know where the head goes. It was like okay, yeah,
Well,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Kieran Atreides was so forgettable, and there is no Kieran
Blank.
Atreides in any of the books, is there?
Yeah,
Blank
Original
character.
character.
He's
Yeah,
so
he felt like a
blank. I'm just like,
placeholder.
holy crap. Yeah, I agree with what Elaine said earlier, where it just felt like almost like those parts of the show were like written by different people. Like it felt really different. Like the dialogue, like everything about it just felt so different. It definitely gave CW.
With
Definitely
the
gave
production
CW.
timeline, it is fully possible that it different stages of the script writing process for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I although it is a nice refreshing thing to have like Ynez being the very interesting character who seems to have some depth and some agency and stuff, and then the like hunky guy is just like a himbo who's just like around.
It's going to be interesting to see her development over the course of the next 5 episodes,
Yeah.
as the future Empress, because like you said, she's got a lot under the hood. I think a lot that she keeps close to her chest. Like I enjoyed the scene when she was talking to her mom in the
Yeah,
episode where
yeah.
she's like, "Mom, like I know what I'm doing." Basically, she's like,
Yeah.
I get your advice, but like I've got my own plans to what I'm doing. So I think she has some agency there, but I'm just so curious. I feel like we're at a roadblock after this first episode because I feel like things should change and get a lot more tense this next episode because of what happened. Like I feel like things have been really shaken up, so I'm just curious to see how every character reacts to what's going on because everybody's plan has been kind of screwed up. So
Yeah.
what
they'll
happened?
also
Yeah,
be
I'm
busy
willing to
doing
give
their
this first up.
flashbacks.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go on.
I was just going to respond to you, Quinn. Like, I'm kind of feeling the same. I'm willing to give this first episode a lot of grace because it's a first episode of a new series, of a thing that had a shaky production and, by all rights, like I never expected to actually be a reality. So I am really trying to like sort of keep my thoughts in check about it and just be like, okay,
Yeah.
this is the first episode. It is what it is. Let's see where it goes from here. I do think I'm going to be a little more laser focused on the second episode. Like I think as we get into episode 2, my feelings will start to solidify a little bit more about the show, because then I'll start getting a sense of like, okay, now you've introduced me to this world. Where are we going? Take me on a ride. Where's the story headed? And I do think there's a lot riding on that second episode for me, as far as
Yeah.
like my personal investment in the show goes.
Oh no, you're right. The second episode is going to be absolutely crucial, I think, for like everybody, right? Even like I think general audiences. I think that a lot of people, general audiences, watch this first episode, and it's going to be dependent on whether or not the second episode hooks them if they continue watching the next.
Yeah,
4.
absolutely.
So this
Totally.
is very, very, very crucial. They need to do it right. If you give me another shitty, stupid-looking bar scene,
Yeah,
I'll be mad.
The whole
you
next
risk,
episode's
you
in the
risk
bar.
a big fall off in viewership for sure.
Yeah.
The Quinn's nightmare is just the character sitting in the bar, and they go, "Man, it was crazy watching that kid's body being found. Like that was
That's how
wild."
it starts.
That's how it starts.
Yeah, I'm worried that we're going to be expected to care about the doomed romance between Ynez
Yeah.
and Kieran, because I don't know if that's going to happen.
I hope she's
I
not
do think that
pregnant.
they're doing good things with the... oh, God, if she is pregnant. I think that they are doing good things with the Imperial family. Like, because I just read Sisterhood, so, like, I'm comparing it
Same,
to the
yeah.
characters in that book. Like, I do think that Emperor Yavako, Empress Natalia, Princess Ynez are much more interesting than the book's version of Emperor Salvador and
Yup.
Empress Tabrina and Princess
yeah.
Anna.
Yeah.
Like, I like Princess Ynez in this show because she has that sort of playful, rebellious unpredictability, but she's not a total dunce like
Yeah.
Anna
She's
is in the
cute.
book. Like, Anna
she's
is
cute.
just empty-headed she seems for most of Sisterhood, but
Yeah,
Ynez has a bit of edge and a bit of ambition, so she's actually interesting. And like, we mentioned that Emperor Salvador in the book is just useless.
He sucks.
Like he's just nothing. Like there's no reason to like him. Whereas like Yaviko in this show he's actually like kind of trying, and he actually believes that he has a responsibility and he's trying to fulfill it, but he's also obviously being manipulated. So I think they've taken the characters in the book and they've made them a lot more
Totally.
they've actually got some layers, and I think they did a pretty good job of establishing that. Like they've given more depth to these characters in one episode than Sisterhood of Dune the book did in the entire book. So
1,000%. Yeah.
they are doing some good.
Such weird books. Sisterhood.
I'm reading Mentats now, and it's like I kept wanting it to get better, but like Anna Carino's story just gets worse, and she gets more. She's just manipulated by everyone all the time. She has no agency. Salvador just continues to suck, and continues to be awful. I completely agree, Shift. I think they could have, if they had adhered more to the book, they could have delivered something so much worse than what we got. And what we got has some like characters and even when you ask the question, Quinn, of like which character am I most excited about, I'm really delighted to say I had to go through like 5 or 6 characters where I'm like, I do like that person, and we'll see what that's it, and oh yeah, Mark Strong's great, and Travis Fimmell's doing great,
there's potential.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential.
I think Valya's interesting. I saw someone in the comments say that like I'm simultaneously rooting for her to win and fail at the same time.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of accurate, because it's just like, I think she's an interesting character. I want to know more about Valya at this current stage, because I feel like there's a lot that's obscured from the audience about Valya right now. And I wonder how aligned she is with the book counterpart, because she opens this episode by saying that she found her new mother in Raquel when she came to the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious about Raquel's person, and she stares at the graven image, literally, of Raquel, like almost like it's religious iconography. Like she's like staring at it multiple times, like in almost like she's staring at an image of the Mother Mary or something. You know what I mean? Like she's praying almost. It's almost religious. So it kind of goes back to the Bene Gesserit saying they're not religious, but they kind of are. They worship themselves in a weird way.
Yeah,
but,
certainly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
I like how
Go ahead.
Valya in the books is kind of a dick to everyone. Like she's very like selfish and cold a lot of the time, which is good, because that's what Bene Gesserit are, and that's the paradox, that they care for the greater good, but they do evil things. And yeah, I agree that in this show, Valya, I think, does capture that, and she does raise interesting questions about why is she doing what she's doing. And so, yeah, I think there is potential in exploring her.
But it also needs to be handled well, how we're given access to her internal reason.
Yeah.
Like, that is always going to be the key. And I think that's also one of the biggest failings of the Game of Thrones finale, where a character that we had ridden along with her reasoning throughout the entire series suddenly became inaccessible to us, and how frustrating that can feel.
Yeah.
They're going to handle the Valya stuff through voiceover. The camera's going to stand.
Princess Irulan from the 1984 movie explains everything.
Oh, wait, I forgot. Xavier Harkonnen.
That's right.
Whale semen.
Anything is possible with AI.
Oh my
Anything.
Cymex. What do you guys think of Jen? Jen was the sister who's in like the lying training, and she tells this
the
traumatic
sociopath.
story that's like partly true. Like she's also quite a charismatic performance. And
What's up with Jin? Yeah, and it
So,
was
like-
interesting when Volley and 2 were having that conversation, and they were talking about Jin and all the other ones. Yeah, Jin's interesting.
So it sounds like she has some kind of traumatic
Trauma.
past. And, maybe she's here to try and, grow stronger, maybe get vengeance or something.
Yeah, because Lila says that parts of her story did seem true. Like, it wasn't entirely
Yeah.
true, but it was definitely, there was, like, truth in the story. Like, to what extent? Like, did she kill her parents? Did she kill a guy that was abusing her? Like, so there's truth in that story. So I guess we're going to learn more about that as the show goes on. And also, I appreciate the fact that they're not neglecting the acolytes. I liked seeing the acolyte part of the story. We didn't really talk about this. I liked the whole training montage too. I liked seeing some of like them maybe like training with like the weirding way and like the prana bindu stuff. And I like seeing that because the Bene Gesserit, they're doing their yoga, they're doing their martial arts. That's like a big part of like what they do, like learning to control like the minutia of their bodies. So I think I want to see more of that in the show, and I like focusing on that. So that's cool. And
Yeah, even the doing yoga in the rain, it's like body temperature, a lot of like, there's some really cool, they're showing us the training regimen for bringing an acolyte to being a Reverend Mother. Although, again, is that just in title of like mastery of truth sense, or is that truly other memories? From the trailer, it looks like we are going to see spice agonies, and that one scene of the woman who can dropped in the room of the shadowy figures and they're like attacking her, that seems like a failed spice agony. So what part is awakening going to be in this show? Like I kind of expected it to be mentioned in this first episode, but they might have to mention it, introduce it, and then we actually get the arc.
I think we're going to get a scene of a failed spice agony, because we've never seen that before, like depicted on like a screen.
So far, it's
So,
100%. It's like, wow, it's easy.
Yeah, so I think we need to see like how it can go wrong, and I hope we get like a really cool, like kind of like psychedelic, weird, abstract, like visual representation of like maybe a sister being destroyed by her own budding ego memories that are trying to come out from the abyss. I don't know, whatever. However they depict it, but I just want something cool and abstract. I love the weird visions. I liked the visions in this too. Like all of the visions were super
great.
cool.
Yeah.
Like
I liked
like
go on.
I was gonna say Kasha's vision. I loved the look of it. You see Ynez in the red dress, and she's the center of the eye, and then they're kind of like mirror images of each other, but kind of the same at the same time. So their fates are tied together, and the union bearing rotten fruit, and everybody being swallowed by the sandworm. Like it's very clear what it's saying. And then obviously. Saying you did this, pointing to the Bene Gesserit. This is your fault. So I liked the visions, even if they were kind of on the nose. At least to me, maybe like for the average person, not super on the nose, but for me, it was like, okay, I get it. But I liked them. I liked them a lot.
Same.
I liked that they were using pomegranates in the vision, and in like the engagement ceremony between Ynez and Pruitt, they each tasted from a pomegranate, because that's that Greek mythological thing where like Hades gives pomegranate to Persephone before he steals her into the underground as his wife. And Greek mythology is where the house Atreides gets their name, from the house of Atreus and Agamemnon. And so it's pulling from the same sort of thread of mythology. And in terms of the characters, the pomegranate is a hint that Ynez's marriage may be leading her into darkness and tragedy, as it does when a son catches fire. So when a husband catches fire. So yeah, I thought the pomegranate was a nice symbolic addition.
Karen says, I absolutely do not understand where the visions come from. They just be having visions. I don't know what.
Well, they're taking lots of drugs. Like they're taking psychedelics and they're having visions.
Half the cast is on cocaine. The other half is,
People have visions in the Dune series. It's just a thing. I don't know.
So you see, Frank in the 60s, he had these special poppies, right? Well, no, he was at this Mexican general's house. This is a true story. He was at a Mexican general's house, and he offered him some cookies when they were having tea. So Frank's like, yeah, sure, I'll eat like 3 cookies. And the Mexican general's like, 3? Wow, like you're brave having 3 cookies. And then Frank realizes that he's like, he's high out of his mind because they're hashish cookies, and that was his first drug experience. So all of this is in Frank's biography written by his son. So that if you're wondering why there's so many drug trips in Dune, I think that's part of it. This book is a product of the 60s.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Someone asked a pretty good question. Will we see the origins of the Navigators of the Mentats? I'm glad we're seeing the houses and their intrigues for power. I'd hope we see the houses in the movies part 1 and 2. Yeah, I like seeing the houses, but Navigators and Mentat, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
In the trailer, we see someone with a diamond tattoo. So we're going to see some Sook doctors, Sook school. I don't think we've seen any of the like Mentat effect. In Sisterhood of Dune, we are looking at also the origins of the Mentat school, and Gilbertus Albans, who's brilliant but also kind of sucks, and is the student of Erasmus the robot. So I don't know. I mean, we also see I hate the Navigator origins from Sisterhood of Dune. Like the fact that Norma Senva can just teleport anywhere and is
my
the
God.
Dude,
biggest
Encyclopedia
Deus Ex
is
Machina.
better.
It is so much better.
So much better. The instant
better.
transmission kills me. Yeah.
The Kohliker Krebs section of the brain where you have time sensitivity. Anyway, yes, the origins are handled in the prequel books that are inspiring this series. I haven't seen any evidence that we're going to get any of that because it doesn't seem like Venport or any of the Spacing Guild stuff is being
no Albertus.
mentioned at all.
I don't think so. If we were to get future seasons, I feel like that would be an expansion of the world that they would then try to get into in season 2, season 3. I really doubt that we're going to see Navigators. I think Villeneuve is going to have the honor of showing us Elric and a true Navigator in the Messiah film.
And make it look crazy.
And
make it look insane.
Yeah, and honestly, if I was like working on this show, I'd be like, I don't want to before Villeneuve does it, right? Like he needs to be the one to set the template for this insane vision of a thing.
Let them spend the money on the concept
and
art.
that too. You know, it's certainly not going to be easy making that vision come to life. So Navigators to me feels very far off. Mentats to me feels like something that could be expanded on and delved more into in a second or third season if the show were to continue. I think this first season they're really going like sisterhood.
Hit the like button, guys, if you're still watching. We got like 600 people still watching. But I was gonna say, too, that like it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like with this show, it's like there's so many possibilities because of how big the Dune universe is. It's like there's so many potential things that like fans could want, like Navigators and Mentats, and it should exist, but it's like 6 episodes.
Yeah,
it's 6 episodes. Like we don't have time. Navigators, Mentats, we don't got time for it. We really don't. We only got 6 episodes, so it's like we got such limited time. So it's like
There's room to tell one story, and to Leo's point, like Sisterhood of Dune the book is like 3.5, maybe 4 stories if you're just no conclusion. You know, they all just kind of
get
it's not
to
just about
the
point,
sisterhood.
and then you have to keep reading. Right. And so we're certainly, I don't think, going to see that many stories at play in this show. We're going to hone in.
Yeah, in
There's
case
already
anybody
way
was
too many
confused.
characters.
Well, Shift, and I was going to say that about the character you brought up, Jen. Like, I want to know more about her, but I'm also like, I think we're getting close to the threshold of how many people I can be asked to invest in and be interested in.
Yeah,
so I'm not sure if she's going to be auxiliary to the little one and her role in Tula, and like kind of similar to Kieran Atreides is more auxiliary to Ynez's plot, right?
Yeah,
Something like that.
and I was reading on a Variety article, there's also Sister Francesca, who we briefly saw in this episode.
trailer.
But according to Variety, Francesca is Emperor Yaviko's former lover, and things get awkward when she comes to the palace with her former lover, Emperor Yaviko. So I'm like,
Whoa.
Oh,
really?
no,
We're
more
introducing
characters.
another side character with another subplot and relationship? It is overstuffed. I can't keep track of all the different sisters, and they're all individual dark secrets. So yeah, there is no chance they're introducing like Navigator characters and Mentats. They have their hands more than full.
So much.
Wow.
And I was gonna say that in case anybody's confused, like the Sisterhood of Dune book is not just about the sisterhood. Like the sisterhood storyline is like spread out over like the other 2 books, and then it's also like about like the Navigators and the Mentats and everybody like slowly developing over time.
Oh, and don't forget
So-
Vorian Atreides, who does almost nothing the entire book and then gets Griffin killed, and that's it's like
And also
20 chapters.
This annoying guy named Manfred that's like really obsessed
This
with
fucking guy named
machine
Manfred.
and stuff. It's like really mad about something.
Gilbertus is pretty tedious as well. Every time he has a conversation with Erasmus, and Erasmus
my
is like,
God.
"What if we tortured every human to death?" And Gilbertus is like, "Ah, yes, father, I must protect you." It's like, what are
It's
you
funny.
talking about?
It's
Make me
funny 'cause I
make me
know-
a body, father.
Make me a body.
Make me a body.
I know
And then
there
he
was
makes him
people.
a body, and then it sinks into the swamp.
It's a
and-
shitty body that falls in the mud.
Why did we do this?
It's so bad.
It's crazy because I know there was people that thought like I'm just gonna read Sisterhood of Dune and be prepared for the show, but then they read it, they were like, "Fuck," like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
No.
literally me. I'm like, oh, maybe we'll do like weekly AltshiftX videos
same,
about
same.
Dune Prophecy. And I read Sisterhood, and I'm like, well, this is a bad book, and it also doesn't prepare me because I
It
have
doesn't
to
prepare
read
you at all.
at least two. I mean, really, I need to read the Legends Machine trilogy as well, and there's no way
Right.
in hell I'm reading
Right.
300 chapters
No,
of Simek.
get the fuck outta here.
Tablet. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing this. Sorry.
Poor Leo read Sisterhood of Dune and was like, wait, this is, I'm not understanding this. This doesn't seem connected at all. Let me read it again, and like went through
Yeah.
again to try and like really pick up any details. And it's just, there was a comment earlier a long time ago at the start of the stream. Somebody was like, what books should I read before I watch this show?
None of them.
Honestly, like
Dune by Frank Herbert.
Dune by Frank Herbert,
Yeah.
I would say. Just read Dune by Frank Herbert and then watch this show and watch the Villeneuve movies. And like that's really
yeah.
all the homework you need to do.
Read Chapter House. You will have more feelings about the Bene
You're
Gesserit
so right.
from reading Chapter House than you will from reading Sisterhood of Dune. I mean, I love Atreides, and the fact that they're making a show about the Bene Gesserit and they're not putting Darby Atreides in it is a crime.
It seems
It's
wrong.
crazy.
It seems wrong.
She's such
It
a good
really
character.
does. I know, and I love. Yeah, and he makes you connect with that character too in the book. Like, just like they're doing a little bit of that. I feel like in this show with I think Lila maybe like because like with Adre not knowing who her parents are, and there's that part in Heretics or Chapter House. I think Heretics probably. Where Adre is thinking about the people that like raised her initially and how the sisters came and like took her and how like she didn't really like know, she hasn't known love like since that point in time. So like it was just like you really connect with that character. And then Audrey also has that like wild talent, they call it, where it's like this kind of pseudo prescience, but not quite because the Bene Gesserit have tried to like stop it from working over time. So and she's like having her dreams, and it's like the sisterhood is like super tense, and it's like she's dreaming about like walking on the wire and like someone's coming to cut it. That a lot of I think this show is kind of Chapter House Heretics coded a little bit because
yeah.
it's like a similar thing. It's like an existential threat to the sisterhood, and it's like got this Reverend Mother that's trying to like steer them on this very delicate path and try not to fall off and kill everybody.
And it's also a schism that must be healed by uniting
Exactly.
two rival factions. Like just like in Chapter House, when they unite the Honored Matres with the Bene Gesserit, in the Great Schools, they unite Dorothea and Valia's two halves. So it's almost like they're trying to like say that they are adapting Brian's books while actually trying to channel the best of the Frank books, which I mean,
Great.
again, like House of the Dragon, it is an unholy love child of like three different canons mashed together. But I think that's what they're trying to do.
Someone asked a question. What do you guys think of the prospect of the writers giving an explanation for how the worms got to Arrakis? Never really explained in the books, later seasons. And yes, I love Adrade too. It's slightly kind of explained in Children of the Dune. It's not really explained, but Leto says he had like a vision of like the worms came to Arrakis from some other place.
Yeah.
And this was a wet planet back then.
Yeah.
So we don't know exactly how it happened, but we know that humans seem to have brought the worms to Arrakis from somewhere else at some point in time. We don't know if they were like bioengineered. We don't know if they came from some distant planet. We just don't know. And I don't want them to explain it. To answer your question, I don't want them to explain
Right.
it. I would rather they leave that super
Yeah.
vague.
And in the timeline of the show, they're already there. We saw
Yeah.
a worm attack.
Yeah, I think similar to, and this is also why I kind of jumped on the Taniti and Neris Mohiam reveal that she's. I think when you try to explain everything, this is also what's so exhausting about the Sisterhood of Dune book and Brian's books in general. When you try to explain absolutely everything, it makes the universe feel smaller.
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
shrinks. Yeah.
good job, you gave me all the answers. And now I'm not like having fun imagining anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's
And
so
that's
many.
what I think, to Shift's point earlier, that's what
Yeah.
makes Frank's original 6 books so exciting, because they're always expanding outward. Like things
Yeah,
are getting,
totally.
you know, you setting aside the criticisms for latter books, many of which I agree with, like at least things are changing and evolving and expanding outward in a way in which I think, Leo, to your point, like a lot of prequel instincts, a lot of Brian Herbert instincts are to like shrink the universe by explaining things, by giving it something an origin story, when it's okay for just us to never know where the worms came from,
Right.
and for it to remain mysterious.
Yeah. Frank is about questions. Brian is about answers. Frank's books,
Oh,
like the
beautifully
landscape
put.
of Frank's
Let's
books.
go. Let's go.
It-
Bars.
It's
Bars.
Bars for real.
Kendrick
could
Lamar,
never-
get out of here.
They not like us.
like Frank's books are full of mysterious chasms, right? All these dark questions that we don't have the answers to. Brian comes along and he paves them all over. He fills in all the gaps. He answers all the mysteries until you're just left with a flat, boring plane.
He's like, I have a new idea for a book. There's 3 days unexplored between that scene and that scene. I'm going to write a new book that takes place in those 3 days. It's
Wow.
like, stop.
Yeah, I was
A
looking at
boring
the
plane where all
timeline.
the chasms are filled. Beautifully put, my guy.
Like the recent books, there's like Princess of Dune, and there's
Yeah.
like Heir to Dune. Like he's literally going
Lady
in,
of
every
Caladan.
like
Just
10-year
every
period
little
where there
corner.
isn't something explained. Here's
Everywhere
what
he can
Irulan
stuff
had
it.
for breakfast like 3 weeks after the end of Dune Messiah. It's like we don't need to know.
We
all
don't
of
need
this
to
stuff.
know. Yeah.
It was
Okay,
better
look.
when we got to use our imagination.
I was saying, so I don't know anybody that's read any of those like new ones. Have you guys read any of those, like the Duke of Caladan,
No.
Irulan, whatever crap? I don't know anybody that has read them, and I always see them in the bookstores, and I'm like, who is reading these? Are they just selling because it says Dune, and like people are just like buying them because
I think
it
it's like
says Dune?
well-intentioned aunts being like, I think
Yeah.
my nephew likes this. It says Dune. And then, it's received. I mean, there are fans of Brian and Kevin's books. They love the Cymex. They love the Terminator stuff. Again, just read Terminator, I think.
There's just so much of it, though. Like, do you really need this Irulan book and this Duke Leto
don't
book
understand
and this Jessica book and all these? Every 5-minute space in between, you need to fill it in. There's going to be a book that takes place in between chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Dune. Like, it's going to be like,
Right.
It's like
It's just going to be
Rosencrantz
the
and
Atreides
Guildenstern.
moving. It's going to be like packing boxes for
Rosencrantz.
300 pages.
It's like Vladimir's guard Nefud. Here's what Nefud was doing.
Yeah. Oh, give me that food backstory.
He went to the Samuta shop and bought some Samuta, but then he had to hurry to get to make Vladimir's lunch. Like,
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I think
Just
I'd
a
love
slice
that
of life
so much
anime
more.
that's just Nefud.
Because I really find myself attracted to like when we talked about this a couple days ago, but like the Dune Encyclopedia is amazing, and one of the things I love about it is that it does a good job of filling in little mundane pieces in the Dune universe without getting too like self-serious about it. Like it's like, oh yeah, this guy was a playwright and also owned a restaurant in Arrakis, and it's like sick. Cool. Like I'd love to hear his life. That's so fun.
I love the fact that the Dune Encyclopedia is like in universe. It's like an in universe history book. Like
great.
it's just so cool.
So
And
good.
I don't want to like keep harping on the Brian Herbert stuff, but it's like I will never understand like why that just wasn't like the basis. It's like if he was gonna like go into like Dune again and like start writing more stuff, like when this is already, I know it's not official canon or whatever, but I don't understand why when you already have this, that this wasn't like the basis, so you could just at least keep the consistency. Well, you know, like a lot of people are like into this.
legal ownership.
Yeah.
Is that
Would be
the real reason?
answer. I don't know.
Oh,
but
interesting.
maybe that's the
Oh,
answer.
Yeah.
maybe.
There was
Well,
yeah.
I mean, he did like wholesale lift entire things from the encyclopedia and write
Yeah.
about them. Like Aurelius Venport and Norman Sevna aren't original characters.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
written about in the encyclopedia first,
That is true.
and then
Well, which makes it even more puzzling,
Brian
though.
laid claim to them and then bullied, like muscled his power into decanonizing and killing the encyclopedia
Yeah.
to clear his way. So
Did-
I mean, it's
did
very
Frank-
messy and a lot of legalese went into it, but. Yeah, I mean, even many of his ideas aren't original. They're just like stolen wholesale from the encyclopedia and then rewritten with his own ideas.
Did Frank write for the encyclopedia at all?
We
Or
don't
was it
know
just all other
all of the
contributors?
43 authors who wrote for the encyclopedia, so we're not sure. But he and McNally were friends, had many sit downs. Apparently, McNally was talking to him every day as they were writing it, and got
They would
multiple.
discuss.
Mhm.
They would discuss the Dune universe like it was real.
Yeah,
Like, I love
Sandworm
that
life
conversation when they're
cycle.
talking about the life cycle of the
Yeah.
sandworms. That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Let's compare
And I'm
notes.
He's like,
But-
"Do I have it right? In my opinion, I think that this is something." He's
Yeah.
But-
really thought about this.
I love that McNally interview because, like, what I was saying before about Frank doesn't care that much about his own lore. Like, McNally keeps asking these questions about so like the Bene Gesserit, when they say that they want the Kwisatz Haderach, how does that line up with the other? And Frank's like, no, whatever. It's about power. It's
Yeah.
about power,
Yeah.
and it's about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mind. It's about this and that. Like, people
Yeah.
ask Frank these questions about, how exactly do the face dancers relate to the Tleilaxu? But his answer is no. It's about the themes. It's about the message, and it's about power and the mind and technology. And so that's why I find it so meaningless and empty to be, obsessing over what are the origins exactly.
Right.
Who was the first navigator? No, what matters is the themes.
Right.
And
He
that is
wasn't
how I
interested
will
in the
judge.
mechanics of how the universe
Yeah.
worked.
That's how I'll judge this show. Like, I don't care if it's a Rossack drug or a water of life or whatever. I care about how the transformation is depicted and what it means for the characters and their plans. That's
such
what
a good
I care
point.
about.
That's
Yeah.
a
Such
great point. That's
Frank
also
Herbert
why
was never about details.
Yeah.
Like he was never about like the little details. Like he doesn't spend a lot of time describing anything. If you
Yeah.
actually think about it, there's not much description of like what things look like or what like the tech looks like. It's all about like a lot of times just like this character's inner monologue and like what they're thinking about like everything around them. It'll be like a whole chapter of just like these musings and thoughts and responding to like things that they're seeing around them. And they can even be like looking at something that's very simple, but it'll be like a whole like page like of the inside of the character's mind describing what they're seeing and describing like what their thought process is. And I really
Yeah,
appreciate
Frank-
that about Frank Herbert.
Frank did not write Dune because he loves worms and spaceships. He wrote Dune because he was working for Republican scriptwriters. He had very strong opinions about the IRS, and he wanted to get it off his chest. So he invented the God Emperor of Dune to go on these rants about all of his opinions about religion and politics. All of the planets and species and houses are just set dressing for him to express his feelings and opinions. And, like the whole relationship between Leto and who's the God Emperor's
Queen-
lover?
Queen
and-
Ori.
Queen Marie.
Queen Ori, like there is so much of Frank and Bev in that relationship, and like the ending with the two, God, what are their names at the end of Chapter House?
Marty
Marty.
and
Marbell.
Yeah.
Oh,
Marty and
Marty
Daniel.
and Daniel.
Like,
yeah.
that is Frank and Bev, and anyone who wants to depict them as Tleilaxu face dancers is missing the point.
Yeah.
There's
I agree.
emotion here.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
Yeah, and this is to your point, Shift. Like this is why I always have a problem with like Leo and I always get a lot of criticism on our show from people for trying to read Frank's thoughts in the story.
Yeah.
I've often said on the podcast that a lot of God Emperor is Frank getting on a pedestal and speaking his mind about politics, religion, philosophy. That Leto's
Absolutely.
words, in many instances, are Frank's words.
Right.
And, we've always consistently, gotten pushback from listeners on that idea where they're like, you have to separate the author from the story.
Not
Leto
in this
is not
book.
Frank. And in
Leto
this
is Frank.
book, if you are reading it deeply and understanding what Frank is trying to say, that's not the way to interpret this book. It is very much, to your point, Frank getting his ideas and views across, and the world he's built is set dressing for those ideas and views.
I will also say, to your point earlier, Shift, like you can see the books and the research that Frank was doing emerging as these like big themes and ideas and conversations that characters are having. He is getting a lot off of his chest. And it's also then fun. I mean, I now have a reading list of like books that were prominent in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, just because suddenly I think it was God Emperor of Dune, suddenly Frank starts mentioning a lot of like Japanese no theater. And it's like, okay, I think he read a book. I think he read a book about Japanese no theater pretty recently. So it's fun to
That's
see.
why he has a major domo.
Yeah, and there's a whole thing about the ring of jealousy, and it's so good, but it is absolutely just Frank writing through his characters to make points that he felt strongly about, which is one of the biggest condemnations I have for Brian's books. Because what are you trying to say with all this stuff?
I feel like it's really hard not to see that. Like reading God Emperor of Dune, like in the book, it feels different from the first three in that sense, where it really does feel like the God Emperor is like talking to us, as in like the human race. Like it's Frank using the God Emperor's voice to speak to the audience, like almost directly, right? Also, I feel like too, like I mean, I mentioned earlier, chapter Heretics of Dune, the scene with Audrey like going into like the spice horde, and he's talking to the Bene Gesserit, but he's also talking directly to the audience, like directly to us.
Yeah.
So like anytime the God Emperor talks, it's kind of like an opportunity for Frank to speak directly to us and to not hide it and to just like say what he actually is trying to say in a very verbose, mystical way. But he's saying,
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember if this is just hearsay or legend at this point, but I feel like I had read at one point that an early draft of God Emperor was just journal entries, just the God Emperor talking at the audience for the whole book. And it wasn't until Frank got like feedback from collaborators and editors that he formed other characters and stories around it. But I can't confirm that that's actually true. I'd have to fact check that. But it makes sense.
My memory of
the book opens up. It opens up when the conceit is like they're reading his journal entries. So that kind of makes sense. What were you going to say, Leo?
My memory of that factoid is that he started, I mean, he did a lot of weird stuff. Like he wrote chunks of Dune as haiku, and then he expanded it to prose from haiku. Which is cool and weird. But my understanding is for God Emperor of Dune, he wrote the entire framework of the story and the arc as journal entries, and then chose which ones to expand into full scenes.
I see. It
based
was like
on that
starting point rough draft thing
as a way of exploring this character he really liked, because he also talked about, I think he ended Children of Dune and then was like, well, I really like Leto 2 and I want to see where Leto 2 goes. But again, we need to citation needed. We need to redouble check.
Don't take that as gospel. That I'd have to fact check that.
Everything said here is true. If it's not true, you can blame the Jabbar podcast.
The Jabbar podcast will be held liable for anything that
That's right.
Shift
That's
or
right.
Quinn says.
Dang it! No!
And I'll say that, but before I say that, the more I study Dune, the more I'm thinking about what would Frank say now in 2024.
Yes.
And I don't know how like topical you guys want to get, but like his themes are more relevant now than they ever have been. And this is the Jabbar podcast. Will be held accountable. So I mean, like technology, for an example, right? Like Frank spent all of his books warning us: don't rely on technology. Don't let computers think for you. And right now, the biggest corporations in the world are spending billions advertising AI tools, generative AI, like ChatGPT. There are ad campaigns coming out from Apple and Google and Facebook. They all want us to use AI to help make decisions for us and to write for us and to communicate for us. This is Frank Herbert's worst nightmare. This is exactly what Frank was warning us against. And Brian misses the point, because Brian wrote about giant stompy cyborgs taking over the world. No, 2024 today is more like the Butlerian Jihad that Frank imagined than Brian's machine war is. It can connect to charismatic populist leaders. Frank was arguing against following a ruler like a messiah, following a politician. And I don't know if you've heard, but like populist, charismatic politicians are taking power around the world today. Frank would have very strong opinions about that. Look at Frank's opinions about the environment, warning us that our actions can impact the environment and that impacts us. And we see climate change getting worse. Like I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, but there's very obviously so many huge issues happening today that Frank was warning us about since 1965.
Yeah, and to be fair, I feel like he'd also have some iffy opinions on like declining birth rates, given his sort of obsession with continuing the species and homosexuality. Like I also think he'd have like takes that wouldn't very much vibe with sort of the younger audiences today, for better and worse, like for Frank, of course, a complicated person, and he's not a monolith. He's not always going to have the right take on everything and be prescient in that way. He would be the first to admit that. But it is very fun. And this is another criticism we get all the time, where people are like, stop trying to read Dune through a contemporary lens. It was written in the 60s. What's the point of trying to translate and put modern ideas on this story written in the 60s? And it's like, what? How is that a valid... what? That's always such a frustrating response that I get from our listeners as well. It's just like, well, you guys are being like way too like woke about this. Like, what's the point of talking about like a woke leftist 2024 idea about a book written in 1965?
The word woke means
the reason
absolutely
why Dune,
nothing.
The reason why Dune is being read today is that it's relevant today. More relevant than it's ever been. That's why it's a classic.
Yeah.
Well, to your point on the Butlerian Jihad now, like you're right, that is exactly happening. We've got billionaires that are in control of like our largest like methods of communicating with each other, and that are like controlling like the algorithms and like what we see. And I mean, it's just men in control of the machines manipulating us. It's like literally exactly that. So
Exactly.
yeah, and also like I'm gonna say it again. I saw so many comments when the trailers for the show dropped when I was saying that I was going to review it. Like, this is woke garbage. I lose tremendous. I'm going to say this. I lose tremendous respect. Quinn's idea is I lose respect for you guys when you say something is woke. I would rather you tell me what you don't like about it. What don't you like? What is it about this that turns you off? When you say it's woke, that means nothing to me because anything and everything gets called woke.
Yeah.
And that can mean a lot of, it doesn't mean anything. So when I see people say like this is woke, I delete the comment and I ban the person because I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. And it's like if I like say like this whole thing and I like say this whole thing and then someone says I disagree and don't elaborate. That's what it says to me when you say it's woke. What are you talking about? Like it's just my little pet peeve. I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Quinn, frankly, I disagree.
Yeah, that sounded pretty woke to me.
Yeah, cringe. Woke. Liz.
Yeah, you're right though, because like the whole message of Dune is that you've got to think more deeply than simplistic explanations, and whatever you think the answer is, it's more complicated than that, and the answer will be different tomorrow, and it'll be different 1,000 years later, and we've just got to keep questioning our assumptions. And any answer that can be summed up in one word is insufficient. There's a reason why Frank wrote 6 giant doorstopper novels and still wasn't finished saying what he had to say, because it takes more than one word to summarize the political and cultural, world that we're living in. So Frank's begging us to think more deeply than any one word answer to any question.
Yeah, and to Abu's point, like, yeah, I definitely don't agree with everything Frank Herbert says, but it's like the whole point is that like Frank Herbert, like you read God Emperor Dune and you're going to think about it. You're going to think about it for weeks, months. It's going to make you think about the ideas that are presented, even if you don't 100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot that just like really just picks your brain. It makes you think about like, I don't know, society and the world we live in and humanity and how humanity evolves over time and what it even means to be human. And what is even the point of like living in a society if we're not like helping each other and evolving and growing, and I don't know, if we're just like stagnating and there's no reason to live. Because like in Leto II's Empire, I think Duncan Idaho says this, everything's the same. Everyone lives in like houses that look exactly the same. Like you're not really allowed to travel anywhere. It's just like this.
It's Ohio. God damn it.
Bland, horrible, unhuman existence, right? And I sometimes I drive past like apartment complexes, like like where I live, and I like look at them and they're just like these tall buildings that look exactly the same in the middle of a field, and there's nothing around it, and I'm just like, that looks so dystopian, and I'm like, is this where we're headed to as a society, where we just all live in like these flat boxes that all look exactly the same, and we all do the same stuff and watch the same things, and it's just I feel like stagnation is death. That's like the death of the human species, and all what makes us humans is the fact that we grow and change and evolve and like we do things. So it's really scary. I don't want to head towards Leto's future.
Yeah. I do think it's a standard that I want to hold anything in the Dune IP to. Like I want it to be driving these conversations forward and to be challenging us about things that are happening today. And I was thinking to myself today as I was walking from work, I was like, it would be so much fun if prophecy really challenged us to ask some questions about like modern society and like today's challenges. But it does also seem like it's just going to be beholden to the expectations of like sci-fi and HBO series and the 2-season arc that Shift has foreseen in his Spice Agony. Ultimately, it feels like that's what it's going to be. But, I think,
Snake Hob Arts, I have no idea what that means. So this is what I'm talking about. It's giving me the what? What does that even mean? It's just
Isn't that like a skibbity toilet?
It's giving me another word that I don't understand. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
He's the Rizzler. Isn't this Gen
Not
Z?
the fucking Rizzler.
I still don't know what you're talking about.
I don't either, to be fair. I speak in borrowed tongues. I've studied the TikTok brain rot. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like Anything else to say about this show? We kind of like just started talking about God Emperor of Dune and
I
like
know.
deep Dune lore. We kind of like
Yeah.
abandoned the show.
Circle back
Whenever
to
you talk about
to the
Brian
parts we
books,
love.
you just realize you'd rather be talking about Frank books.
Well, and for what it's worth, I keep forgetting that we're streaming. I'm just like, what a great conversation I'm having.
Yeah.
This is so much
Oh
fun.
yeah, we're streaming for people.
Oh
So-
right. Oops. I don't know. I think the last thing I'll share, I guess, is just that the conversation's ongoing. We're going to see what episode 2 is like. That's going to really cement, I think, a lot of our expectations for what episode 3, and we'll see how successful it is. A lot will be determined in the next week. And wow, Jesus, 630 people. All right. So, that's, I think this week is going to be very informative to the future of
Yeah.
Dune television series.
Yeah,
It's
we
the end
gotta
of the
see
first
the whole
act.
scope. Yeah.
Second episode is 1/3 of the way through.
Oh God, yeah. Jeez.
It's going to be over before we know it.
It's gonna blink. It's only 6 weeks. Yeah, it's gonna be a 6-week thing. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel like it is hard to talk about until we see the next episode because like we have no idea like if this show is gonna be like a show that's like, oh, this was so good, or if it's gonna be a show that had like a decent first episode and then just got really boring and bad. So we'll see because I feel like a big thing that could really screw up this show if it's episode 2 comes out and it's just boring. I feel like that's probably the worst thing that can happen. If
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
boring. And then it's going to be like, damn, fuck. We're not getting
Yeah.
any more of this Dune show stuff. So it's like, I
Right.
feel,
Yeah,
God.
next week we can just do 3 hours on Leto too. I think
Yeah.
there's plenty of material there.
Well, with the 6-episode runtime, like they don't have any time for filler. I mean, like you need to, everything you're showing me needs to be important. It needs to matter. So if we get to the next episode and it's like this slow, drawn out, and it feels like a filler episode, I'm going to be really upset because you're already giving me 6 episodes and then you're giving me, we don't need filler. I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I didn't watch the new season of House of the Dragon, but I heard people complain that some of it felt like filler when you already don't have enough episodes. I don't know. I didn't watch
Yeah,
it. So.
yeah, that was a major complaint for sure.
The structure was balked, yeah. I'm expecting next episode to be a 60-minute flashback of where exactly does Harrow get all that whale seed?
Oh, that's right. That's
It's
right.
just
Where
the
are the
deepest
Harkonnens right
dive.
now? Lankaville?
How do
Where
you
are they?
Like-
how do you
Veil.
milk it? What's the process?
I
On that
mean,
note, I'd
getting
better
it's
run.
difficult, but it's you get a lot of it. Hey, AltshiftX, I'm a huge fan. You do such
Oh.
good work.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure to sort of meet you for the first time ever. Yeah,
Yeah, no, thanks so much, guys. This
yeah, we
was
love
a
your work so
pleasure.
much, and you're so well spoken and eloquent. And
I'm jealous. Stop.
honestly, like,
How?
let us know when the EP drops. When you're gonna we're ready. We're ready. to
Kendrick
support
Lamar's
you.
career is going down as soon as you're first.
No, you're flattering me, guys. It was really awesome to chat. Really awesome to meet you. Really awesome to hear your perspectives. We should definitely do this again.
Yeah.
For
sure.
sure. For sure.
Thanks so
And,
much for hosting, Quinn.
Yeah,
Ah, no
yeah,
problem.
thank
No
you,
problem. Anytime. I love having you guys on and talking about Dune because I don't have like many people in my real life that like have read like all the Dune stuff and know Dune stuff. So whenever I can talk about someone that actually knows what they're talking about, it's like yes,
Yeah,
feels good.
yeah. Don't worry, Quinn.
Oh,
I think
also, did
most
you
of
guys
this
see the
group has
ballast
scared
set?
away friends and family.
Yeah. For
Did
sure.
you guys see the Balisette in this episode?
Yep. Wasn't
The ballast
Constantine
set.
playing it? No. Yes.
It was. Yeah. It's like I
Yeah.
forgot to mention that, but yeah, that
Some
was the
hot
Balisette.
fella was playing.
Yeah, Constantine was serenading some extras with his sexy balisette playing.
Oh,
so,
but the blonde woman who is Richies, she's a Richizian person,
Yeah.
oh, is she?
I
I
think.
thought that was the one that came in with all the Ricci's people.
Yes.
Yeah,
I thought that was
I think
like
Pruitt's
Pruitt's
sister,
sister.
is the implication.
We
Yeah.
got a 60-minute balisette solo next week.
Whole episode.
Play Freebird.
Oh my God.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. I think
Till
we're
next
gonna
time.
wind down.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Until next time.
We're gonna wind down. I'll see
Sounds
you
good.
guys later. Everyone in the
Yep.
chat. You guys have a
Thanks,
good
chat.
day.
Yes,
Bye,
chat. Thank
guys.
you for
We're
hanging
gonna
out.
get out of here. We've been going for like almost 3 hours. So peace out, guys.
All right.
Have a
See you
good one.
guys.
We'll see you next week, maybe.
Bye.